Hiyashi didn't mind the two angry females that were stabbing him with merely their eyes, he was more concerned with what he had just seen through the Byakugan. Right before he had thrown the kunai, the black chakra had surged to Naruto's eyes. During the kunai's brief flight, he noticed the black chakra rushing to the blonde boy's skin. The kunai had struck precisely where the new chakra was gathered before rebounding. The chakra then spread along the entire length of Naruto's arm and didn't seem to be leaving. The clan head's thoughts, though not bothered before, were now abruptly interrupted by the accusing yells of the young Jinchuriki. Oi Tem! What was that for? Trying to get Konoha's next Hokage killed. Naruto was raging at the clan head, and it didn't escape the said man's attention that Naruto was no longer addressing him as Hiyashi-sama. Naruto, calm down, look at your arm now. It seems hard. Hiyashi said calmly. Experience showed that if he answered Naruto with anger and force, it would just rebound back to him, and that could quite possibly take hours. The confused boy prodded his arm and found it extremely strong. Hiyashi watched as the new chakra slowly receded back into the chakra coils. Hiyashi-sama, it's getting soft again. Naruto whined. Of course Naruto, you are no longer in any sort of danger. Ito, so if I want to see it then I need someone to throw kunai at me. Asuma's cigarette fell out of his mouth as he gawked at the stupidity that just came out of the boy's mouth. Hiyashi ignored the stupid comment as he watched the boy. Naruto, now tense your arms, as if you were gripping something very tightly. Hiyashi was a little surprised to see that Naruto complied without complaint. He observed the black chakra behave similarly to before. Okay Hiyashi-sama, look, it's hard again. A very excited Naruto exclaimed. Good, now try keeping it like that. While no change was visible to Naruto's outside features, Hiyashi had to admit that the skin now held properties of a very durable metal. Naruto was now also doing a great job of maintaining the new armor. Hiyashi watched curiously as it began to slowly spread around Naruto's body before he realized what Naruto was doing. Naruto was spreading the black chakra to cover his entire body. And it was working. Grinning like a sly fox, Naruto punched his head and a loud metallic sound echoed around the room. Yada! This is so cool. I'm awesome, you know. Then just as quickly as his new armor had come, it disappeared back into his chakra network. Apparently the boy was learning how to control it rather well and rather quickly. Then Naruto heard a voice in his head. Brat, go to your room now. Prime wants to speak with you. Naruto groaned. Do I have to? It took a minute before he realized that he had said it out loud. Baka. You can just think what you want to say. You want them to put us in the crazy department. Gome. Gome, Naruto thought sarcastically. You could have at least warned me earlier. What do you have to do, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked quizzically. Hiyashi was also wondering what the boy was on about, but he didn't bother. What interested him more was that the flame of orange chakra in Naruto's stomach seemingly grew brighter. Ha, aha. I have something to do. Hiyashi-sama, can I go now? Naruto's face had gone from utterly clueless to normal Naruto in an instant. Hinata noticed the change but decided not to push it. She would ask him when they were alone later on. And what may you need to do, young man? Kurenai had an eyebrow raised, her red eyes digging holes in Naruto's defense. Say you have to study. Kurenai-san, I have to go study. Naruto had finally regained his calm attitude since the kunai. Kurenai's jaw, however, dropped. She didn't know whether to marvel at the respect or at the fact that the blonde boy was going to study. Luckily for Naruto, Hiyashi wasn't watching him. For a liar he would have been a deer in the headlights. I have a feeling what we're going to do is going to take quite a while. No dinner for you. Oh come on. I'm starving, you know. Naruto threw as much anger as he could into the thought. But he still did what he was told. Oh yeah, Hiyashi-sama, I won't be taking dinner tonight. Please don't disturb me in my room. Yane. And with that Naruto bolted out of the room. Hiyashi shook his head. Looks like Naruto has gotten a little overexcited. He commented lightheartedly. Asuma, Kurenai, come with me. In addition to Guy, you are both witnesses. Hinata, Go to your mother and ask for dinner to be made only for 3. Hinata nodded. 2-san, where will you be? I will meet with the Hokage Hinata. Alright, you are dismissed. Hiyashi rose from his chair just as Hinata left the room. I wonder how Hiruzen will react. He said to no one on particular. Let's go. Naruto's room. A few minutes later, Naruto ended up in his room and locked the door. He then sat cross-legged on the floor and closed his eyes. You'd better have an explanation about this Kurama. Naruto angrily shook his fist at the large fox. I don't owe you an explanation. Prime wanted to speak with you, so I just called you, brat. The Kyuubi replied, casting its eyes towards the robot. Naruto scratched his head. You said you don't owe me an explanation, but you just gave me one. Naruto said cheekily, grinning at the Kyuubi. The Biju snarled. Just get on with it. Kurama decided to treat those as parting words and sulked to his corner of the large cage, where he dropped down and decided to watch everything with a large, blood-red eye. I apologize for any inconvenience, Naruto. Optimus took it as his turn. The blonde boy crossed his arms and pouted. But I have a better explanation for your new abilities. The large robot continued. Naruto's eyebrows perked up at this and he decided to give the machine his full attention. I'm listening. The cube grants power to its wielder. For some reason, its effects are being unleashed much faster in you than expected. Such as the ability you have in your eyes and your new form of armor. It's awesome, you know. It can block swords and kunai. What else can I get? Naruto asked eagerly, barely able to contain Ho's excitement. I am unsure, to tell the truth. But I have noticed one thing. Optimus signaled to the cube. When you decided to save your friend a while ago, you freed another robot from the cube. This here is Bumblebee. Another robot slowly walked out from behind Optimus. It was a much smaller robot that reached little less than half of Prime's height and build. Even with its reduced height, however, it still towered over Naruto. But whereas Optimus had an air of authority and leadership around himself, this smaller robot brought around the same mischievousness that Naruto did. Its most striking feature was that it was almost completely covered in bright yellow. It eagerly waved its hand at Naruto. It seemed a lot like a child itself. Naruto, you can harden your entire body now into armor, right? Optimus continued. Sure, but what has it got to do with that awesome guy? Naruto was far too interested in Bumblebee to grasp what Optimus was saying. The two newly met acquaintances seemed to be having fun making faces through the bars. Optimus sighed and dragged Bumblebee back to his side. Okay, Naruto, what if I tell you you could probably turn into your new friend here? Optimus asked, desperate to regain the young Jinchuriki's attention. It worked better than expected. Awesome. That's gonna be really cool. Teach me now, I'm ready. Naruto's attention was now solely focused on the larger of the two robots. Remember how you hardened your body into armor? I want you to do the same thing, but try focusing and transforming yourself into his shape. Hi. Naruto opened his eyes and the sewer disappeared. He was still in his room. Okay, now I have to try this. Naruto began focusing the energy he felt in his body and he got the desired result, his body turned to steel. He was disappointed in the next step, however, when he tried converting his hardened body to look like the yellow robot. After 5 fruitless minutes, a frustrated Naruto VWNTU read back into his mindscape. Optimus, it isn't working. He whined. Stop complaining and get back to trying, brat. The Kyuubi snarled. You're annoying me. Naruto turned and stuck his tongue out. Shut up, fuzzball. Kurama's left eye twitched, his previous container was very fond of calling him just that. Naruto's attention went back to Optimus, who was ready to explain. Naruto, you need to have a very clear picture of what you are trying to copy. Here, try holding Bumblebee's hand while you try and morph outside. Naruto complied. He opened his eyes in the outside world and forced his arm. He was surprised to see it yield results. His entire arm had now converted into solid, visible steel. And it was painted yellow. Grinning victoriously, Naruto quickly returned to his mindscape to show off his achievement. That worked. But can you try it with your whole body? Optimus complimented the boy. He noticed that the blonde was determined to learn, which was a good thing. Of course, I can do it, you know. I'm awesome. I'm so becoming Hokage. If Optimus had a face, he would have frowned. He had to agree with Kurama in some things. Naruto was now more determined than ever. He forced the power to the rest of his body and attempted to morph. For some reason, the only metal parts were from the already transformed arm. In other words, it didn't work. Once again Naruto was starting to get frustrated. After a while he decided to return to Optimus. The robot seemed to have a lot of answers. Maybe, you need to chant it, the larger robot answered. Like the Hyuga and their Byakugan. Naruto thought about it. My eyes only work when I'm in danger. What if I name it something so that it comes on whenever I want? By all means brat, try it, the Kyuubi commented sarcastically. Naruto blocked the Biju out and started focusing the pressure behind his eyes. He could feel the energy, but his eyes weren't converting. Orange eyes. Naruto yelled. When nothing happened he heard Kurama roaring with laughter in his head. What was that brat? Shut up. Byakugan. Naruto shouted more forcefully. The Biju inside him was going to lose its head laughing. Baka. Names have power, but only if used right. Orange eyes. Kurama was clearly making fun of the boy who in turn was doing his best to ignore the giant fox. Naruto pulsed the energy to his eyes one last time. Suihogan. The energy took form and the young Jinchuriki grinned as his vision clouded with the crystal clear orange. When he willed it to, the energy lost focus and his eyes reverted back to normal. After a few more tests, Naruto walked right up to the now silent Kyuubi, grinning wildly. Vanishing Eye? Kurama asked, curiously. Why that name? Naruto shrugged. It just felt right. Kurama seemed satisfied. Optimus nodded. The boy has now discovered the power of names. Try calling out, Bumblebee, now, while you are in armored state. He suggested. By now Naruto was getting the hang of listening, it always seemed to do him some good. Bumblebee. Naruto yelled out. There was a large puff of smoke, and where there was once Naruto, there was now a yellow robot. The robot was the spitting image of Bumblebee, but there was no change in height. The robot was only as tall as the boy was. Not that Naruto was disappointed. Yada. He yelled. Immediately, he noticed that his voice sounded weird. Like a high-pitched broken radio. There was also the fact that he felt like dancing with joy. Inside his mindscape, Prime began explaining. It seems you have morphed into exactly the same being as Bumblebee. That feeling you have to dance must come from Bumblebee's personality, it seems you even carry that with you. Naruto was listening to the voice in his head while slowly testing his new body. He could still move it fast. But with each step he took, he heard the floor underneath groan underneath the strain. He liked it. Suihogan. The boy was even more pleased to discover that both abilities could function simultaneously. Naruto, try handing control of your body to Bumblebee. Just relax and don't move. Inside his mindscape, Naruto sat cross-legged in the water as he watched Bumblebee take control of his body. Kurama was impressed, but kept his amazement hidden. After a few minutes, Naruto took back control of his body laughing. Then he heard a voice outside the room. Nato ni-san. Called out Hanabi. We brought you some food. Naruto panicked. Whoa, she can't see me like this. They're gonna think I'm an intruder. Hinata, Hanabi knocked. Did he open the door yet? A third voice called out. It was Hitomi. Inside the room, Naruto was desperately doing his best to transform back. Optimus. Help me. Kai. Optimus was busy thinking. Try calling out your name. Naruto. A high-pitched whirring voice called out. The three women outside exchanged a look. Naruto-kun. Are you all right in there? Hinata asked nervously. They then heard heavy footsteps. Ixa. It didn't work. Naruto whined in his head. He leaned against the wall opposite the door, and it caved in. When they heard the crash, Hitomi nodded to Hinata, who palmed the locked door open. They did so just in time to see a lone figure running across the courtyard in the dark, barely visible in the moonlight. It then leapt over the compound walls. "Follow Naruto, Hinata. He might be up to something. Come Hanabi, let us return the food," Hitomi instructed her daughters. Hinata nodded and took off after the fleeing object, her Byakugan active. Naruto was shocked. He had simply leaned on the wall and it had crumbled. He heard the door behind him burst open and broke into a run. "If they think I'm an intruder, they might kill me," Naruto thought. He was frightened. He realized that despite his weight, he was moving faster than he had normally and easily leapt over the compound walls. "Wow, this new body is cool," ran through his mind. He started sprinting now, straight towards a clearing in the forest he knew. Hinata was disappointed. After only 5 seconds, the figure she was chasing had already gone out of her range and she hadn't even been able to get a good look at it. But she could tell one thing. It was leaving a path of destruction behind it. Heavy footfalls and snapped branches and more. Hinata was not a good tracker, but any villager would have been able to follow this trail. Naruto swore again. At the speed he was going, he kept slamming into branches and tree trunks. The bad part was he didn't feel the impact. But the trees sure did. He had once slammed straight into a tree trunk and the tree had snapped and fell. He had to get out of the transformation soon. It seemed like his new body gave him an increase in speed that he could not properly control and that also came with his newfound strength. "Why don't you use your orange eyes?" the QB suggested. Naruto felt like he had just been slapped. "Big time. Suihogan," he yelled. The blonde boy was greatly relieved to see that while everything was in slow motion, he had time to make decisions, even at the speed he was traveling at. He also noticed that the footsteps he was leaving were way too obvious. What if I stopped hitting the ground so hard? He kept the same speed he was going at but started lightening his footfalls. Soon there was hardly any footprints being left in the grass and Naruto smiled before carrying on his way. Hinata, however, frowned. The obvious trail she had been quickly following had become less clear. The one she was tracking seemed to always be heading in one direction or other. Then the destruction to the forest had abruptly stopped. All that had been left to follow were the deep footprints, and now, even those had disappeared. Now the Hyuga heir had no idea where to go. Meanwhile, Shino and Kiba were walking home from the park with Choji and Shikamaru. The topic of conversation had been favorite foods. Shino had been slowly getting more open with his new friends and was starting to get to know their habits. Shikamaru loved watching the clouds and playing shogi. Other than that, the Nara was pure lazy. Choji, being an Akamaiki, had to eat a lot to sustain the energy for a fight and always jumped at the opportunity for food. Shino had also discovered that calling an Akamaiki anything even remotely related to fat was pretty much asking for a death sentence. He had witnessed this firsthand in the playground when Kiba wasn't watching his mouth. Choji had insisted that he was only big-boned before enlarging his arm to punch Kiba into a wall. Kiba he found was carefree and rude, which made him fun, if not dangerous to be with. Kiba held up his hand and sniffed the air. Something's wrong. Shino and Choji ceased their conversation to look at him while Shikamaru simply stopped walking. "It's Naruto." "What's wrong then?" Choji asked before munching on his chips. "He's moving very fast," Kiba replied, his concentration evident. "Is there a problem with that?" Shino was worried by the look on Kiba's face. "Naruto can run fast." Kiba shook his head. "When people sleep, something changes about their smell, only we in Izuka can smell it. But Naruto smells like he's sleeping, and if he's moving too fast to be himself, then someone must have gotten him." Shino quickly interrupted. Kiba nodded. "Whoever it is must be fast and good. I can't smell anyone other than Naruto." Shikamaru now opened his eyes. "Nobody will really care enough about Naruto to help him, so it's up to us." Choji put away his chips, a serious expression on his face. "Then let's go. As Naruto's friends we have to try and save him. Kiba, lead the way." Kiba nodded and broke into a run, closely followed by Shino and Choji. Shikamaru sighed before running after them. Troublesome. Back in the field. Naruto was relieved when he finally got to the small clearing he always came to and stood in the middle of it. Nobody would be here to bother him. Or so he thought. The next moment, 4 figures appeared in front of him looking ready for a fight. He smiled when he realized that it was 4 of his friends. Where's Naruto? What have you done with him? Kiba yelled. Naruto looked at him as if he was an alien before tilting his head to ask the question. What? He's not answering, Kiba. Why? Because he wants to keep Naruto. Shino said in a monotone which creeped out Naruto in a way. Choji cracked his knuckles. If he wants a fight, then he'll get one. We're gonna get Naruto back. Nobody takes our friend. Shikamaru was just glaring at him. If in any other circumstances Naruto would have been overjoyed that they would go this far for him. Only now, they were mistaking him for an enemy. And the moonlight was making them even scarier. Guys. It's me, Naruto. The new robot body pleaded. Kiba scoffed. Last I looked, Naruto was a boy our age who was wearing orange. And with that, Kiba threw a kunai deadly straight at Naruto. For once the kunai was heading straight for its intended target. Naruto noticed a kind of metallic visor automatically slide down to cover his face, leaving only his eyes open. Suihogan. He yelled. This time the blue lights of Bumblebee turned a bright orange. Naruto then easily sidestepped the kunai. He then noticed the bugs that were attached onto his arm and carefully brushed them off. I can't get any chakra from him. Shino warned. My bugs are of no use. The Aburame then reached into his pouch and threw 3 shuriken dead straight at Naruto, who raised his arm to block them. After they rebounded off, Naruto realized he couldn't move. Shadow possession technique complete. Shikamaru chanted, crouching on the ground. Naruto noticed a thin shadow connecting his to Shikamaru's. Naruto put as much force as he could and realized that he could break free easily with his newfound strength. Shikamaru yelled and collapsed in a sweaty heap after doing his best to maintain the jutsu. Naruto looked at his 3 friends before realizing too late that Choji was missing. He turned around to meet a very enlarged fist. Partial expansion jutsu. The Akamaiki yelled before his fist connected. All 4 attackers' eyes widened when the force of Choji's fist slammed into the yellow robot's chest, and the robot didn't budge. Naruto didn't want to hurt his friends. Guys, stop. I don't want to hurt you. To hell with that. Kiba roared, charging him. Naruto sighed and, as gently as he could manage, pushed Kiba to his side. Unfortunately, gently for the robot was like getting sucker punched. When the angry 4 moved in again, Naruto lost his patience. I said stop, TT Ibeo. He yelled forcefully before punching a large tree full force. The unfortunate tree snapped and fell. Frightened by the power display, the 4 decided to stand down and glare. It's Naruto. Shikamaru said suddenly. The other 3 looked at him in shock and he continued. If that was an enemy ninja with that much power, don't you think he would hurt us? And Kiba, you said you could smell Naruto on him. I don't see any possible way for him to hide Naruto. He looked towards the robot they had been fighting. What happened to you, Naruto? The Nara asked. Naruto was relieved to say the least that Shikamaru had figured it out. If he hadn't, then he might have accidentally hurt his friends. Naruto simply explained that he had a power to change into the robot. But now, he had no way to turn it back to himself. Kiba was still suspicious but kept it to himself. Maybe you need to force yourself back inside. Choji suggested, once again having a go at the chips. Naruto attempted this but gave up when nothing seemed to be happening. What about shouting your name to transform back, like what you did to activate your eyes and body? Shino had listened intently to what little Naruto had told them and had come up with his own conclusion. Or what about imagining something you like? Kiba stated, feeling the need to at least contribute. Aha, good ideas. Naruto said happily. Naruto, Naruto, Naruto. He yelled. Ixa, it's not working. He sat and thought again. Neither is thinking of ramen. He pouted, now what? Shikamaru had taken his time. What if you think of something that relaxes you? In his head, Naruto heard Optimus approve. The blonde boy stood up and began imagining things. He saw a bit of violet and purple. Then some blue-black hair. He was snapped out of his thoughts as Kiba began howling in laughter while the other three boys looked away. Tem. Why did you interrupt me? Naruto shook his fist angrily at Kiba. Kiba pointed at him and Naruto was relieved to see that he was back to normal. Then he realized why Kiba was laughing. Due to the transformation, he had no more clothes on. He stood clear to the world in his birthday suit. Then he turned bright red as he heard another very familiar voice call his name and immediately covered his pride. Naruto. Is that you? Hinata called as she stumbled out of the tree line. The sight that greeted her was the completely naked backside of Naruto Uzumaki. Nah. Hinata managed to say before she felt the familiar lightheadedness that usually accompanied fainting. As she fell, she looked up at the starry night sky and smiled before blacking out as a small trickle of blood came from her nose. By now Choji and Shino had joined Kiba in his laughter while Shikamaru was shaking his head with a clear smile on his face. Naruto had turned an unhealthy red. Ixa. Bumblebee. He summoned his robot counterpart out. Naruto was silently rejoicing at the fact that at least when he was machine, he didn't need clothes. Go home guys, and please don't tell anyone else. Kiba snickered evilly. About your little midnight run. Without any. Bonk. Kiba rubbed the back of his head in pain. Oi, Shino. What was that for? I believe Naruto asked us to keep a secret. If you find keeping secrets difficult to keep, then maybe I should also find that your secret was hard to keep. Kiba stared at Shino in shock. And no. That's blackmail Shino. Shino grinned back. Don't worry Naruto, Kiba won't say anything unless he wants me to tell you about that. Kiba was now firmly behind Shino with his hand firmly clamped shut on the Abarame's mouth. Don't worry Naruto, we won't tell anyone. Naruto could swear Kiba was sweating in nervousness. Just how bad was it? He nodded in thanks before picking up Hinata and heading back towards the Hyuga compound. Kiba watched Naruto's back intently and when he was sure that his blonde classmate was out of earshot he let Shino go and hissed. Shino, you aren't supposed to blackmail your friends. It's one thing friends never do to each other. Shino smirked. Then let us be the first. With that, the bug user went on his way with a smile on his face. Kiba trudged after him. At least Choji and Shikamaru are out of earshot now. Naruto had opted to go back in through the main gate. Seeing his friend's reactions a while back meant that he would probably be attacked if he went in any other way. Besides the Uchiha and the Senju, the Hyuga were probably the strongest known clan in Konoha. And Naruto did not fancy the whole clan raining down on him. As luck would have it, Naruto was having a bad day. Hey you! Why do you have Hinata-sama? A patrolling guard yelled from behind him. This alerted the four main guards who also charged him. They stood cautiously a little distance away from him. Automatically Naruto's visor dropped and all 6 of the guards took this as an aggressive indicator and charged him. Naruto sighed, he would have to get that part under control. Suihahan. After a few minutes of the group trying to touch him, the group slowly withdrew, suddenly wary. The only people that could possibly dance in between their shots with ease was someone with a strong dujutsu such as a Sharingan. But they were wary as they had never seen an orange dujutsu before. Let alone the thing in front of them. Naruto was just as wary, they could try to attack him again at any time. He was still carrying Hinata so he made the smart choice and laid her gently next to the wall of the compound. He then turned to face his aggressors. What the boy wasn't expecting however, was an attack from above. 8 trigrams, air palm. Hiashi yelled, blasting the intruder with as much force as he could muster. He was surprised when the target didn't budge. Even through his Byakugan, he couldn't sense any chakra from the machine and therefore, couldn't see the tenkatsus he was aiming to close. Still, he knew their approximate position. Stop. Hiashi-sama. Naruto commanded in his altered voice, cursing it for being so different. Hiyashi paid no heed and Naruto began doing his best to dodge the rapid strikes that the man was throwing him. Even with his Suihogen, he was having difficulty. It wasn't long before the clan head landed a hit. He's fast, Hiyashi thought. With this skill, why isn't he attacking me? He may even be the better fighter. Hiyashi saw an opening on his opponent's shoulder and quickly took the opportunity to try and shut down the left arm. He screamed as his hand connected. The chakra that was supposed to have entered the body rebounded and gave his hand a chakra burn. He grabbed his wrist and gritted his teeth in pain. Hiyashi forced himself to stand back up and stare at the one who was supposedly kidnapping his daughter. If you fight again, scary man, you might just get hurt. And if you haven't noticed, I haven't attacked you yet. To serve his intimidation purposes, he found a large rock around his height and crushed it. Something clicked in Hiyashi's mind. Scary man. Hiyashi narrowed his eyes at his opponent. Is that you, Naruto? The boy gave a sigh of relief. Hi, Hiyashi-sama. And I'm kind of hungry now. Can I explain after we get Hinata inside? Naruto asked. The guards and the two patrols were unsure, but with how much their clan head seemed to trust newcomer, they didn't dare question him. They just decided to escort him in case the machine did anything funny, not that they stood a chance. Hinata was carefully placed into her bed by a still transformed Naruto. Thankfully, Hitomi had already set the young girl's bed. After saying goodnight, Hiyashi followed Naruto to his room. Hiyashi-sama, may I take a moment of privacy? Naruto looked towards the boy and the robot gave a look back that said, I'll explain later. Inside his room, Naruto managed to quickly transform back into his human self and fished out a new suit. I really need to find a way to fix this problem with the clothes. He sighed heavily. Just how much did Hinata-chan see? Go ask her yourself. Kurama roared with laughter. Naruto just visited his mindscape to put his tongue out at the Biju when Optimus had an idea. There might be a seal for that sort of thing. One that would cause clothes to reappear. Or maybe a space-time ninjutsu to store clothes. Naruto nodded in thanks before heading out of his room again. The normally stoic Hyuga escorts backtracked, this was the one that had showed them up. They left Hiyashi when he reached his office and beckoned them to leave. Hiyashi sat down sternly on his chair. Standing next to him on his right was Hitomi. Okay, Naruto, what happened since we last saw you? Naruto sighed. I found out how to activate my eyes and make my armor much better. The eyes activate like this. Suihogen. Hiyashi nodded in approval. Good work. I have also witnessed the power of your new armor, how do you activate it? Same way as my eyes. But I would rather not do it now. Hiyashi raised an eyebrow. When I transform back my, clothes are no longer there. Naruto turned red from embarrassment. He decided to leave out the little detail that Hinata had seen him at that exact time. Kiba, Shino, Choji and Shikamaru also know. Hiyashi suddenly turned even more serious. How? Did they know to keep it secret? Naruto had a flashback where Shino seemed to have dirt on Kiba. Yes, I'm sure they can keep a secret. Naruto replied before rubbing his head and feeling sheepish. They thought that someone had kidnapped me because Kiba could smell me. And we had a sort of, fight. Naruto saw the look the clan head gave him and immediately raised his hands to show innocence. But nobody got hurt. I promise. Fine, I believe you. But what about that hole in your room? I was testing my new jutsu and then Hinata came in, screamed and air-palmed me. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. This was better than letting Hiyashi know he wasn't yet sure of how strong he was. Now what jutsu would cause her to do that? This one. Warok no jutsu. When the smoke cleared, Hiyashi's jaw dropped at the woman standing before him. The next second Naruto was sent through the wall by a powerful air palm by Hitomi. Naruto-kun. How dare you do that in front of us? Hitomi said, blushing furiously. She then turned around and slapped her husband back to his senses as he was stuck staring after Naruto. A very tired-looking Naruto crawled back in through the hole. That was exactly what Hinata did. I can see why. Hiashi breathed out heavily. Okay, Naruto, get some rest, we need to go to the Hokage tomorrow morning and see what to do about your new powers. And maybe that clothes problem. Naruto grinned happily, can I get some ramen before I sleep? He asked innocently. Hiashi waved his hand in dismissal. Knock yourself out. Naruto leapt up into the air. No problem Hiashi-sama, I will do just that. This is so cool you know. And with that the boy dashed away. Mom at Naruto. I was joking. Don't knock yourself out with ramen. Hiashi had almost flown out of his seat after Naruto before Hitomi took hold of his shoulder and calmed him enough to sit back down. The clan head rubbed his temples. Second day here and he's already giving me this many headaches. Hitomi laughed. Come Hiashi, it's time we also head to rest. Hiashi smiled and followed his wife. After Naruto had finished his ramen, he was looking up at his ceiling. What an interesting day. He thought. New powers and a new armor. Wow. The boy quickly lay down to go to sleep and almost immediately found himself in the presence of the Kurama and Optimus. He looked over to the smaller Bumblebee and an idea popped into his head. Nay, Optimus. Naruto called. The Autobot turned his attention to the blonde. If Bumblebee is that much bigger than me in here, then how come I don't change in height when I transform? Maybe there is a technique we need to know. Such as the Akamiki expansion jutsu. Whoa, awesome. Imagine what a giant robot like that could do. I'm gonna ask Choji to teach me tomorrow. Tomorrow is tomorrow Naruto. Go to sleep. Optimus ordered. Less than a minute later, the young Jinchuriki entered a deep, dreamless sleep. Meanwhile, Uchiha Itachi was running silently on top of the rooftops in full Anbu uniform. He was on his way to the Hokage's tower where he had been summoned. He was also told to ensure he was not seen at this time of night. This was critical. The Uchiha vaulted over the large fence and headed straight for the tower. Upon entering he cast a genjutsu on everyone he met, just to think that he had never been there. He opened the Hokage's door and entered quickly without knocking and bowed down. In front of him were the Hokage and his three elders. Danzo, Homura and Kaharu were sat in place for the meeting. Itachi kept his kneeling position next to Uchiha Shisui. Itachi, Shisui, what have you learned from your clan's recent meeting? Hiruzen asked both his visitors. Itachi spoke first. Despite me and Shisui's efforts, the clan intends to go through with the coup. They have stated the exact places to target and where they will lay the traps. We must do something soon, Hiruzen. Kaharu said, turning her head to face the Hokage. Surely you must realize that simply talking to the Uchiha won't work. Danzo added. We should strike now and cripple the coup before it becomes serious. With our combined Anbu we can surprise them and take them out with minimal casualties. Hiruzen put up his hand. Be patient Danzo, they still haven't said who is involved in this. We cannot simply massacre all the Uchiha. Shisui, carry on. Hokage-sama, so far we are completely sure that only those Uchiha who have activated the Sharingan are participating. The rest know about this but are too frightened to act. Itachi's father, Fugaku, is leading the attack in its organization. Despite the risks the coup may cause for the village, he foolishly insists we continue and has even asked me and Itachi to spy on you for them. So only those that have unlocked their Sharingan are taking part. Kaharu clarified. Hi, they were the only ones present at the meeting and warned that none of the information should leave the room. Not even to their wives or children. Shisui answered, keeping his head down. Do you know why you clan is doing this? Homura asked. Ever since we Uchiha were given the duty of the police force, my father thought of it as a way to keep us out of the village unknowingly. He has also long since believed that Madara should have been the Hokage. I managed to keep him in check, but ever since the Kyuubi attack, the village seems to have lost trust in them. But now they do not care. They will either take over the village or die trying. Itachi answered solemnly. We shall give you the information you require, but please do not injure those who are not involved. Do not worry, Itachi. I give you and Shisui my word that as long as you are both loyal to the village, we shall be merciful. Hiruzen comforted. Hi, Hokage-sama. The two Uchiha said in unison. Itachi took out a map. Here are their plans. A few minutes after Shisui and Itachi left, Hiruzen called on his Anbu. Summon all the clan heads except for Fugaku. If he asks why he was not summoned, then inform him that it is simply paperwork and other small clan matters that would be too much trouble for him. Also tell him just to continue doing his duty. After the team left, Danzo turned to Hiruzen. Well then, let us prepare for battle. Comforted. Hi, Hokage. Unknown to anyone but a select few, the Uzumaki clan was far from extinct. A 3-day journey to the west of Konoha, deep in the dense forests of the Fire Country, lay a small hidden village that contained the majority of the survivors of Uzushiogakure. Being specialized in fuinjutsu, all the surrounding area had been rigged with barriers specially designed to casually deter any living presence that happened to stumble anywhere close to the village. Whatever approached the area would not notice anything amiss but would slowly start heading in another direction without noticing and not really caring. As far as they were concerned, there was nothing there. The only way to get through the invisible barrier and into the well-hidden village was if you had a special seal engraved onto your shoulder that acted as a key. Behind the barriers, the survivors of Uzushio were living as normal a life as they were able. Unknown to anyone but a select few, the Uzumaki clan was far from extinct. A 3-day journey to the west of Konoha, deep in the dense forests of the Fire Country, lay a small hidden village that contained the majority of the survivors of Uzushiogakure. Being specialized in fuinjutsu, all the surrounding area had been rigged with barriers specially designed to casually deter any living presence that happened to stumble anywhere close to the village. Whatever approached the area would not notice anything amiss but would slowly start heading in another direction without noticing and not really caring. As far as they were concerned, there was nothing there. The only way to get through the invisible barrier and into the well-hidden village was if you had a special seal engraved onto your shoulder that acted as a key. Behind the barriers, the survivors of Uzushio were living as normal a life as they were able. Clothes shops, schools, restaurants and many other facilities were present to help them enjoy life in peace without fear. The majority of the population trained in their unique skills with a passion. Being phenomenal masters in fuinjutsu, kenjutsu and taijutsu, they were very much feared as a clan on par with the mighty Uchiha and Senju. This was also not taking into account their unique Kekkai Genkai. Most of all, the males could open what they called the celestial gates that gave a deadly boost in speed and strength. There were 10 of these gates and differed from the inner gates as they had no ill effects on their user afterward but required a cool-down time instead, which varied from each individual and could be unlocked one by one depending on the user's physical and spiritual strength. Most of the female Uzumaki only had half as much chakra as their male counterparts but made up for it by calling on powerful sealing chains from their bodies which could be used to attack or defend at will. Needless to say, the Uzumaki were also well known to have extremely large reserves of chakra naturally and great longevity. With all this, they were a very powerful and independent clan that didn't have any harsh rites of passage or any of that nonsense. They simply lived with their own respective families happily. It would have been a shame to let their abilities diminish over time. Over half of the village's land was used up solely in training grounds and sparring areas. In the center of the tiled village was a great library full of seals that the Uzumaki specialized in. Coming from Uzushio, the building layout followed a spiraling pattern that was very clear from a bird's-eye view of the village. The roads were tiled with green, blue and white tiles that reminded them so much of their former home, and the buildings themselves were built from sturdy wood. Each large 2-story house looked like a traditional Japanese tea house that had lanterns hanging outside at night. The Uzumaki were powerful, but with this power grew fear. During the Second Great Shinobi War, Uzushiogakure was one of the first to fall. Kiri, Iwa and Kumo led a joint attack on the much smaller hidden village and tried to overwhelm it with their combined might. Uzushiogakure held its ground for a full 3 days, reducing the opposing army considerably and forcing the 3 great nations to hesitate. Uzushio was also suffering from its losses and the second Uzushio, the building layout followed a spiraling pattern that was very clear from a bird's eye view of the village. The roads were tiled with green, blue and white tiles that reminded them so much of their former home, and the buildings themselves were built from sturdy wood. Each large two-story house looked like a traditional Japanese tea house that had lanterns hanging outside at night. The Uzumaki were powerful, but with this power grew fear. During the Second Great Shinobi War, Uzushiogakure was one of the first to fall. Kiri, Iwa and Kumo led a joint attack on the much smaller hidden village and tried to overwhelm it with their combined might. Uzushiogakure held its ground for a full 3 days, reducing the opposing army considerably and forcing the three great nations to hesitate. Uzushio was also suffering from its losses, and the second Uzukage decided that the only way for his people to survive was to buy them enough time to evacuate, and there was only one way to do that. He instructed his brother along with the elders to take everyone to Konoha. The second Uzukage told his brother to ask Tobarama, the second Hokage, for help, and with that he handed his brother the sacred scroll and asked him to pass it down to his son. The very next day, with only 10 of his most powerful shinobi, the brave Uzukage and his squad charged their attackers head-on. They had fought viciously for a day before they were overwhelmed. The Uzukage breathed his last breath with relief. His people were safe. The group had successfully met with Tobarama, the second Hokage, who quickly promised them aid. He denied their request to aid in the war and pointed out that they should first focus on their own safety. Since Konoha wasn't the safest place to be in, Tobarama led them to a secluded part of the forest where no fighting seemed to be taking place. It was here where they resurrected their village and set up their protective barrier. Due to the fear of being discovered, most remained within the village. However, 4 warriors were sent to accompany Tobarama and act as messengers and bodyguards. The Uzumaki had been saddened when they learned that Tobarama had shared a similar fate to that of their Uzukage, giving his life so others could survive. Soon after, Hiruzen Sarutobi had been appointed Sandaime Hokage and had been shown the way to their village. The third had asked if they wanted to come live within Konoha as the war was over. The Uzumaki had politely declined the offer, as if word got out that they were still alive. A similar scene to Uzushio could potentially repeat itself, as many feared them. Hashirama's wife Mito Uzumaki visited them once before she passed away. She had come to search for an Uzumaki strong enough to take her place as the container of the Kyuubi, as she was growing very old. She feared that if she died, then the nine-tailed fox would be freed and release destruction to the world. Sadly, her only option had been a rather young 5-year-old girl who she discovered was the only daughter of the late Uzukage. After getting her uncle's consent, they started the transfer immediately, and with all the Fuinjutsu experts present, nothing could have gone wrong. Because she was an Uzumaki, the old Mito managed to survive having the Biju extracted and lived her last days among family. Kushina Uzumaki then followed her Hiruzen back to Konoha, where she would call her home. Without the rightful heir present, they all turned to her uncle, the one who had led them out of Uzushio. He reluctantly took up the position, knowing that the scroll would only open for the rightful heir. Kushina visited every now and again, and each time refused to take the scroll, as if she knew what was in it. Someone could probably take the information off her person and put the clan at risk. Together with the elders, they agreed that Kushina's child should take up the mantle as Uzukage and clan head once he or she came of age. Then 15 years ago, Kushina had come saying that she was finally getting married and apologized as she wouldn't be able to visit them anymore for quite a while. In her absence, the title of temporary clan head passed down to her cousin Shipuu Uzumaki. Said man was patiently waiting for his cousin to return with the heir, but was starting to become worried. They were no longer aware of anything outside their village, as they had all that they required in it. They had no way of knowing the devastating attack of the Kyuubi when it arrived at Konoha, and that the heir they were looking for had become its next Jinchuriki. 3 days ago. Shipuu Uzumaki was in a deep thinking state again. Thoughts of his cousin and her well-being wouldn't leave his mind. 15 years, the heir might be 14 or 15 right now. He thought to himself. Or maybe they waited a while and he's still younger. Well, I'll see what the council thinks. It would probably be okay if we checked up on the child now. Wait, Girl or boy? The tall man just sat back in his chair over his temporary desk. The man was in his early 30s and was considerably powerful. Maybe not as much as he knew his nephew or niece could become, but powerful all the same. If not for his emerald green eyes and the bright red hair, he would have looked very similar to the Hyuga. His robes were another issue, however, as where the Hyuga wore mostly white, these battle robes were very colorful and each cloak had a brilliant story emblazoned on each one if there was time to look. After a few more minutes of his entranced thinking, Shipuu called for one of his guards to summon the council while he got his kids. They would be essential to the plan he had forming in his head. He was silently hoping that the new heir didn't have as much energy as his son. Actually, he would prefer if the heir was nothing like his son at all. He decided to visit his children in their favorite training ground. Safe inside the barrier, there was not many reasons for security, and due to their small size, conflicts were easily avoided, mostly due to the clan's cheerful if somewhat violent nature. In the said training ground, Shipuu's wife, Yugiri Uzumaki, was watching her triplets train. Being the leading female figure in the clan, she had been instructed to act as a role model for the young shinobi and kunoichi, and she regrettably had to force herself to act polite. Being an almost untamable wild soul, this had proven extremely challenging. Yugiri had even ended up scaring her husband, who commented that she was Kushina's frightening long-lost twin. This had also been based on the fact that if they didn't dress differently and wear different hairstyles, they would have been creepily identical. Where Kushina preferred in letting her long hair hang free, Yugiri preferred wearing her hair in a traditional bun. They duo had gone so far as to both approach Shipuu while looking identical, and the poor man had fled from the deadly duo for almost an entire day for fear of kissing Kushina instead of his wife. Not to mention that Yugiri found that he couldn't tell the difference quite insulting. She had single-handedly come up with the frying pan no jutsu, specifically for her husband. Yugiri smiled. She and Kushina had become close during their visits, and the two discovered one thing. They were both wild and hot-headed and had some sort of knack for getting into trouble. If only Yugiri wasn't bound to remain hidden, she would have gladly joined her surrogate sister. Oh, the horrors they could achieve in a village as large as Konoha. Currently she was leaning against a large willow tree near the river as she watched her children practice in the grass field in front of her. Meanwhile, a boy and his two sisters were practicing their throwing skills on some of the throwing logs which held the targets. The eldest sibling, Kaide, was mostly silent. She would join in the mischievousness of her brother and sister due to all her spare energy. But while her two siblings loved more physical forms of battle, she would prefer using fuinjutsu and spent a lot of her spare time silently reading scrolls. Her tactical mindset and general intelligence providing much-needed planning for well-known pranks. She wore her straight, long and red hair freely with long bangs covering her emerald green eyes. Since her head was mostly buried in a book or scroll, not many people got to see the young, silent girl look up. Akane, however, was almost nothing like her sister. Being much more hyperactive and slightly tomboyish in nature, she was like a ticking time bomb. She had so much raw energy running through her that most of the time she wasn't able to sit still. She liked physically training to her limits, and she simply admired using a sword. Whereas her sister's long straight hair hung low to her lower back, Akane's spiky red hair reached her shoulders. Any longer and she viewed it as a nuisance. Where her sister excelled in seals and thought things through, Akane had more of a let my fists do the talking attitude, and she excelled in kenjutsu and taijutsu. The youngest of the trio was Arashi. Unknown to them at that time, he was a stunning image of Naruto. The only difference being that his hair was the Uzumaki shade of red and had stunning green eyes. His choice of clothing was much worse, however. A bright orange jumpsuit would have screamed, "Kill me!" in the shinobi world, but a neon yellow jumpsuit was a self-painted bullseye. And it was annoying. Both of his sisters for the life of them couldn't figure him out. They wore black battle kimonos that went well with their hair. Akane had even once gone far enough to deny that Arashi was her brother. Arashi was not the most talented boy around. The boy had a potential for power, but a long way away. He certainly wasn't very bright either and had a very short fuse, even for an Uzumaki. The two older girls had the basic gist of throwing kunai and shurikens, but sadly, their little brother was as far from it as anyone could possibly get. With every throw, he seemed to disturb some form of wildlife in the nearby bushes or in the forest itself. Kaide and Akane wouldn't be very surprised if Arashi would accidentally find them extra dinner with a very unlucky creature that would just happen to pass by. Gah! It isn't working! Arashi yelled, slumping back down to the ground. Akane snickered. That just proves you've got no talent. Girls are better than boys after all. Akane crossed her arms and stuck her tongue out for added effect. Oh yeah. Prove it. Arashi yelled back sarcastically, glaring at her from where he sat. Akane sighed and threw a kunai dead center with barely a glance. She grinned smugly at her slightly younger brother. Arashi lost his cool and glared at Akane. Celestial Gate Release, First Gate. He yelled as a mass of dense blue chakra was emitted around him. With a childish battle cry he charged his sister, who sighed again. She turned to her more silent sister. Kaide, a little help if you don't mind. Kaide stopped focusing on the task on hand and nodded. Celestial manifestation. They shouted in sync. 4 golden chains erupted from each girl's body and they easily chained their raging sibling who was thrashing wildly. Yugiri laughed and came to defuse the situation. She leaped gracefully from her watchful position and landed gently next to her fuming son. A hand on his shoulder was all it took for him to calm down and the swirling blue energy slowly dissipated. Seeing this, his twin sisters recalled their chains. Okay children, back to training now, Yugiri smiled. Arashi grumbled something unintelligible as he pulled out a kunai. Ka-san, Arashi is gonna get a rabbit for us tonight when he misses. Akane chirped. Arashi growled in defiance. Yeah right, I can hit it, TT Ibeo. With those words he flung the kunai with all his might. 4 sets of eyes watched its flight into the greenery, frightening a small badger. Akane snickered while Yugiri raised an eyebrow at her son with her arms crossed. Arashi looked at his mother and raised an arm to rub his neck while grinning sheepishly. Hey, you see, he didn't get to finish as his father had just arrived on the scene after his peaceful walk. Yugiri, take the kids and come with me. We've got a council meeting that involves you. Akane immediately went up to Arashi and slapped the back of his head. What did you do this time, Baka? She yelled in anger. Apologize now. Arashi was still semi-conscious on the ground below, so he didn't get to hear his father laugh. Calm down Akane, nobody did anything wrong. It's just an important meeting to help us decide what to do with your cousin. Shipuu calmed them with a smile on his face. The 3 siblings raised an eyebrow and Arashi spoke their question. Kira. No. Your possible cousin, are cousins in Konoha. They are going to be your Auntie Kushina's children. Arashi's face lit up. Whoa, that's cool. Are they coming soon? Shipuu shook his head. That's what we will be discussing with the council. Now come along and no more questions till we get there. And with those words, the family took a peaceful walk back to the village. A few hours later. Haha, this is gonna be so cool. We meet our cousin, soon. Arashi was packing his things as quickly as was possible, dashing here and there and knocking a great many things over. Arashi. Calm down. Finish packing up and stop making everything so hard. Kaide was already irritated that she could not bring most of the scrolls she had been planning to study as they were not permitted outside the library. Since they were headed to Konoha for an extended stay, she would not be able to get back to her precious scrolls anytime soon. Just thinking about it made her cringe. The hyperactive boy packing next to her, however, had paid no heed. Nay, Kaide. Would you prefer a boy or a girl as a cousin? Arashi stopped for a moment and seemed to be deep in thought. Hopefully, if it's a boy then I hope he's like me. But if it's a girl then I hope she's better looking than my other 2. The next second Arashi was blasted through the wall of the second floor as Akane's fist connected violently with his face. Kaide took a glance and snickered before Yugiri turned around with a smirk on her face and pretended to scold her daughters in a motherly tone. Now girls, you shouldn't be very violent towards your brother. He may be a baka but look at the damage hitting him does. Arashi chose that moment to leap back into the room yelling victoriously. Yada. Tell them Ka-san. His mother responded by punching him back out the way he came, much to her daughter's amusement. She walked over to the second hole in the wall for the day and peeked 2 stories down at her son. As for you young man, stop giving them reason to hit you. Now get back up here so we can finish packing. Arashi lazily lifted his face from the tiled pathway to look up at his mother. Hi, he barely managed to let out before collapsing back down. Yugiri sighed, what had she gone wrong? Kushina had better be happy to see her. A little while back, all the gathered officials had supported their leader's decision and very few counter-arguments were put in place aside from the obvious risk of venturing out. There usually weren't many meetings to call as due to their isolation, therefore not many problems popped out. Attending the meeting were the other clan heads of the smaller clans that had occupied Uzushio alongside the Uzumaki. They consisted of the Azuki, Sunahara, Seiza, Negai and Ryuden. While not as powerful as the Uzumaki, they were still powerful shinobi in general. Having no need for privacy or security measures, the council gathered together in a small park to discuss. It was here that Shipuu suggested sending a small party to Konoha to check on his cousin and the status of their heir. The party would consist of his 3 children and his wife and were to be accompanied by 4 of the strongest warriors currently at their disposal. His reasoning being that Kushina and her husband would be more at ease with a familiar face. The brief meeting had ended quickly and the council had reached a unanimous decision to send Yugiri and her children to Konohagakure. The family had been ordered to leave in a few hours. A few hours later, the small group of Uzumaki that would venture for Konoha stood at the edge of the barrier. This gave the children just enough time to say goodbye to their father. Don't worry Dad, we'll get our cousin and auntie back. Arashi boasted, thumping his chest for added effect. To-san, it's not yet too late to leave Arashi behind. Kaide complained sarcastically. As expected, her younger brother lost his temper and his already loud voice amplified, making every cringe. Gah! What's that supposed to mean? He yelled defiantly before turning around to cross his arms and pout. Akane and her sister merely rolled their eyes in annoyance. Shipuu laid a hand on Arashi's shoulder to calm him down. Remember, outside this barrier is no longer safe, you will no longer be hidden. This means you will not be safe until you have reached Konoha and that is a 3-day journey. As much as possible no messing around until then, understood? The shinobi present acknowledged the command. With one last hug from Arashi, the group leapt into the trees. Shipuu watched the retreating figures of his family and realized all he could do now was pray to Kami that they would remain safe. 2 days later, a group of 20 Kumo nin were on their way home after a successful assassination in Kiri. The target had had a small army of commoners and only 2 Chunin-level shinobi. The proud ninja had slaughtered them as per orders and were now on leaping through the Fire Country's jungle. All of a sudden, their sensor detected something and warned the others to stop. Impossible. He uttered in disbelief. What's up old man? The commanding officer asked out of concern. They were an elite group of 20 shinobi. What could possibly spook the old sensor? He had survived 2 great shinobi wars after all. It took one word to change everything. The Raikage would not forgive them to let this opportunity pass. Uzumaki. Ka-san. Are we there yet? Arashi whined as they leapt through the trees. Akane clenched her fists in irritation and ground her teeth. Shut up for 5 minutes Arashi. You've been asking that non-stop ever since this morning. The hot-tempered redhead yelled. At least it's not as annoying as calling for a break every 10 minutes. Besides, you've been going to the bathroom quite a lot. We should have been in Konoha by now if not for you. He countered. Kaide didn't feel the need to warn Arashi to watch where he was going and sure enough, her little brother slammed into a tree trunk, allowing for Akane to snicker while the rest of the group paused to watch at the children's antics. One of the 4 escorts then snapped to attention and began speaking urgently. Yugiri-sama. Large force heading our way, possibly hostile. The group sobered immediately and set grim expressions, awaiting orders. Taiki, Hiroki. You two continue on with Yugiri-sama. Mariko, stay here with me. We will hold them off. Hi, Hachiro-senpai. The three answered in unison. Everyone acted on the order almost instantaneously, with the others leaping back into the trees as fast as possible while Hachiro and Mariko turned to stand their ground and wait. Sure enough, 2 minutes later, the small Kumo battalion halted in front of the duo and eyed them suspiciously. Noble sacrifices him. One of the men sneered. This makes it easier. Imagine what Reikage-sama is going to give us as a reward for capturing you two. Added another, already rubbing his hands together in anticipation. After a few more minutes of glaring, an unsaid signal came to start the fight. Raiden, Kuro Ikazuchi Yari. Lightning release. Black lightning spear, one of the Kumo nin yelled, forming a crackling spear of black chakra and launching it towards the pair. Ten no Kenjin, Genso no Hogo. Celestial manifestation. Elemental protection. Mariko countered. Golden chains then erupted from her body and started spinning dangerously fast in front of her partner and herself. The black chakra spear connected and hung there for a moment before being absorbed by the chains. Said chains then began crackling in black lightning chakra as they stopped spinning and pointed back at the one who had thrown the spear. Mariko held an arm forward and shouted, Hansha. Reflection now combined with her chakra, the deadly spear was again formed, but this time it was almost twice as big. The Kumo ninja with common sense leapt away from where she was aiming, but two of the ninjas seemed to just be staring at her in shock. They screamed as the jutsu vaporized them. Recognizing the danger of using ninjutsu, two of the remaining Kumo shinobi drew swords and charged at Mariko. With an almost careless flick from the chains, the weapons were snatched out of their hands and used to impale their previous owners. Mariko spotted two more hiding near the tree line and preparing a collaborative jutsu. That couldn't be good. Two more of her deadly chains shot out and wrapped around the enemy ninjas' throats, forcing them to interrupt the seal-making and clutch at their throats, desperately trying to pull the golden chains away. Mariko then smiled as she felt a familiar power wash over her. Ten no Mon Rirasu, Dai Roku Geto. Celestial Gate release. Sixth Gate, Hachiro yelled. The enemy ninja gasped at his visible change in appearance. The amount of chakra stored within him was being released and could visibly be seen as a blue, flaming aura around him. His hair seemed to blow outwards due to the chakra, and his eyes, the entirety of them, were glowing a very strong blue. Then he moved. In a blur he was up next to a Kumo shinobi and let fly a powerful roundhouse kick that shattered his adversary's chest cavity. The next enemy was a little more prepared and held out his massive sword in front of him to block, but to his horror, the sword shattered from the hit and he was thrown backwards from the impact, slamming his head into thick tree, killing him instantly. He turned to a group of three who were desperately trying to form another collaborative jutsu. His hands rapidly formed seals at a much greater speed than them and accomplished his jutsu first. Sweden. Sweryuden no Tagen. Water release. Water Dragon Horde. 6 fearsome dragons erupted from around him and in an instant had each slammed down onto one member. Hachiro then heard a yell behind him and turned just in time to see the man get impaled by a golden chain. Hachiro walked up to the shinobi and planted his hand on his chest, forming a seal. A second later the seal was complete and Hachiro kicked the man powerfully in the chest, sending him flying like a bullet to 3 other comrades. The human missile barreled into one and the other 2 could only watch in horror as their teammates exploded, engulfing all 4 in flames. He turned to the last group of 4 and cocked his head to the side in surprise when he noticed that all 4 had been supplying chakra to power a jutsu. It was no doubt a powerful one. The lightning began crackling and gathering in their hands and they all thrust into the center together yelling, Raiden, Yomo Kaminari Doriru. 4-way lightning drill. It all condensed into a small ball before letting loose a blinding flash of light as the crackling beam shot its way through the forest towards its intended target. The 4 were now exhausted. They had poured everything they had into that last attack and were hoping to at least get back to Kumogakure alive. When their eyes cleared they stared at the destruction caused in the wake of the lightning bolt. The ground was scorched black and the trunks of many trees had been turned into charred remains. They gasped in shock, not because of what they had done, but because of the figures standing at the center of it all. The 2 looked unharmed. Well, that was a nice one. Hachiro chuckled. It tickled. Hachiro-senpai, we need to get back to Yugiri-sama. Please stop messing around. Mariko asked politely. Hachiro sighed. Well then, here we go. He grinned at the other 4 spectators. Lightning is powerful, he started, forming a crackling ball of it in his left hand, but what happens if we add water to it? He continued, forming a similar ball of water on his right. I guess it's time for you to find out. With that, Hachiro clapped his hands together. The effect was similar to the first. It produced a beam of lightning wide enough to cover a house. But added to this powerful beam was highly condensed water traveling at immense speed. Either attack alone would have been enough to decimate the remaining 4, but the combination attack ripped apart any symbol of hope they would have had. After surveying the destruction, Hachiro turned to the way Yugiri had gone and leapt up back into the tree line with Mariko following close behind him. Mariko, hurry up. Once we catch up to Yugiri-sama, we will continue as her escort to Konohagakure as fast as possible. We will not rest tonight, so we should be able to make it there by early morning. Mariko nodded in affirmative and they picked up their pace to catch up with the group. Unknown to them, they were being watched. The Kumo ninja that had sensed them was disguised as part of a tree when they passed overhead. When they were long gone, he too surveyed the wreckage. Reikage-sama will want to find the others of the Uzumaki clan urgently. He muttered to himself. The aging man had pieced everything he had heard together and was now sure that the Uzumaki were in hiding somewhere. And if the clan was planning on moving to Konoha, no. They could not be allowed that. The frightened man had been there on the attack on Uzushio and knew the power of the Uzumaki. If the clan had successfully replenished itself since that time, they were already a terrifying power. And if Konoha accepted them, then the Konohagakure's power would increase drastically. He quickly began the long journey home. He had to report this. Present day. Kotetsu and Azuma were sulking. The Hokage had ordered them to be on station at 6 sharp in the morning and the sun was barely even up. After the meeting the night before, most of the clan heads had warned their respective clans to keep away from the Uchiha and stay as close as possible to their respective compounds. The villagers had gotten a bad vibe for something the other night as well, and most seemed reluctant to start waking even though everyday work regularly started at 7. Azuma and Kotetsu's duty in this was to dissuade the coming and going of people from the village due to the risk of getting caught in crossfire should a coup be launched. They sat at their station expecting a boring and tiresome day when they spotted a cloud of dust from the road and the source was approaching the gate fast. They activated an emergency seal before leaping in front of the gate to halt whoever was coming. A few seconds later, an entire squad of Anbu had Shunshined, body flickered, to aid them. The group of 15 ninja awaited the oncoming force, which slowed to stop to reveal 3 children and 5 adults who stared back at the gate guards, unsure of what to do. Arashi looked at the guards in confusion. Weren't they supposed to be welcome here? Or maybe this wasn't Konoha? Arashi shook his head at the thoughts and approached the guards with a smile. Hello, nice to meet you. Can we get in now? We want to speak to the Hokage. And we're kinda tired, you know. Arashi kept up a smile as he greeted them and raised his hand to rub the back of his head. One of the Anbu misunderstood the gesture and body flickered behind Arashi, holding a kunai to his throat, shocking his fellow Anbu. Itachi was one of them, and behind the mask his Sharingan was already active. He was wary of the newcomers as their chakra levels were very, very high. What shocked him even more, however, was what he saw when they reacted to the danger of one of their own. Their chakra levels skyrocketed and Itachi knew he would have to defuse this quickly. 15 Anbu and 2 Chunin would be no match for the firepower this group carried. Not to mention the potential damage to the village an assault would cause. 10 no Mon Rirasu, Dai Nani Geto. 7th gate. The 3 grown men yelled in unison as they began glowing blue. 10 no Kenjin. Celestial manifestation. All the women followed suit and 8 menacing chains from each female hovered dangerously in the air. There was also the captive to think of, as he had already broken free from his captor and activated his own celestial gate and rejoined his group. All 8 then bombarded the remaining Anbu with a huge wave of killing intent that caused Azuma and Kotetsu to shiver and their knees quake. Even the other Anbu looked visibly shaken. Before anything else could happen, Itachi had leapt into the middle of the two groups and faced the newcomers. Slowly, the Uchiha removed his mask and raised his hands to show he meant no harm. I sincerely apologize for our behavior, but I believe we have gotten off on the wrong foot. I am Itachi Uchiha and we were alerted to a possible threat at this gate. He explained a little uneasily. Yugiri nodded and everyone retracted the power they had been displaying. Pleasure to meet you, Uchiha-san. I am Yugiri Uzumaki and these 3 children are mine. The 4 over here are Uzumaki as well and are our guards. We request permission to meet Hiruzen-sama. Itachi was bewildered. Uzumaki. All of them? How come? Why are they here? He thought. Itachi motioned to another Anbu agent. Cat, report to Hokage-sama. There are people at the gate who wish to see him. Cat had stepped forward and was about to shunshin, but Yugiri signaled for the agent to wait. When he asks, tell him this. The spiraling plight of red from second on to third. Cat nodded in affirmative before vanishing in a swirl of leaves. Itachi turned from the agent back to the Uzumaki group. I'm sorry Uzumaki-san, but we request you wait here until we receive word from the Hokage. It is not an issue, Uchiha-san. But Ka-san. I'm tired and I wanna sleep, you know. Urashi whined. Akane scowled and hit him upside the head. Baka. The least you can do is behave. Akane growled. I agree. Less than a minute in the village and you nearly get us into a fight. Kaide added, fiercely glaring at her little brother. It's not my fault. He started it. Urashi countered, pointing at the still-downed Anbu that had threatened him. Yugiri face-palmed. Well, so much for a good first impression. 10 minutes earlier, Hokage Tower. Hiruzen, my clan is ready should the Uchiha try anything. They have been told to remain inside the compound and confine the children as much as possible. Any child leaving will have an escort of at least 2 grown Hyuga. Hiashi reported sternly. Hiruzen turned away from the windows in his dreams of painting the sunset. That is all very well, Hiashi, but that was necessary and I do not see why you have requested to come see me for simply that this early in the morning. Hiashi sighed. It's about Naruto and his powers again. Haven't we talked about those before the meeting last night? Hiruzen leaned forward onto his desk with his arms supporting his head. Hiashi sighed again before dropping into a seat and pinching the bridge of his nose. Yes, we have, but there has been a new development. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at this. Seeing Hiashi was waiting for him to say something, he signaled him to continue. His armor, he has somehow developed it into something more powerful than its previous state. He seems like a walking machine. He is powerful enough to crush large rocks in this form and the armor itself is very powerful. It also seems immune to our Juken attacks. Hiashi raised his right hand for the Hokage to see. This is what I got for attempting to close a Tenkatsu point. It seems the chakra I was going to force in was thrust back at me. Which brings me to the next issue. In this form he is completely masked. No chakra can be seen from him. It's almost like he is just a complete machine. It was now Hiruzen's turn to sigh as he leaned back into his chair and lit his pipe. Is this all because of the incident a few days ago? Hiashi simply nodded. Well, I guess all we can do is hope for the best. The old man added. He will continue to attend the academy and we will not interfere in his life. But do ensure he doesn't do anything silly. Both old men looked at each other and smiled. He had to take after his mother. Hiashi joked while the Sandame chuckled well-heartedly. All of a sudden there was a small disturbance off leaves and an Anbu agent appeared. Hokage-sama, there was trouble at the gate. The visitors wish to see you. Hiruzen laughed. That isn't new, cat. We have that every once in a while. Hokage-sama, they say they are Uzumaki. At this the old man's eyes narrowed. What have they told you? The spiraling plight of red from second unto third. Hiruzen jolted up. Hiashi, come with me. We have to treat our guests. Cat, I hope you have not angered them in any way. Cat blinked. I'm afraid that is too late, sir. There was a slight confrontation at the front gate. The old man spun around abruptly. What? He demanded angrily. That is a foolish move. Cat flinched. It was rare for the peace-loving Sandaime to display anger. We are now aware of the risk, Hokage-sama. Rest assured, Itachi has managed to get them back to neutral terms. The Sandaime wore a look of relief. He then held Hiyashi's shoulder and he disappeared in a swirl of leaves, soon followed by Kat. At the gate, Itachi was slightly amused at the ongoing interaction between the three siblings. He was about to bet against himself how long the confrontation would last before a swirl of leaves indicated that the Hokage and the Hyuga clan head had arrived. Itachi was surprised to notice how the siblings almost immediately ceased their bickering and followed their mother's example when she bowed down to the Hokage. Hokage-sama, it is a pleasure to finally meet you again. Yugiri greeted with her head bowed. Hello Yugiri-chan, why did you give no warning you were visiting? Hiruzen replied with a friendly smile. My apologies Hokage-sama. We could not risk simply sending birds. Yes of course, Hiruzen waved off the topic with his hand. So what has inspired his visit? Shippuwu is curious about the heir. Yugiri informed him, standing up straight to look him in the eye. When Hiruzen's face flashed a grim look for a second, Yugiri caught it and knew something was up. Something bad. Okay, follow me, we can talk inside the Hokage tower. Hiruzen replied, his face set back into a friendly welcoming grin. Hiyashi was the only one who noticed a lot more smoke escaping the Sandaime's pipe than usually did, and he understood the fact that his old friend was suddenly under a large amount of stress. Hiruzen turned around and gestured for the Uzumaki to follow him. Given clearance, the Anbu present all scattered and went on their way. It was a quiet stroll back to the Hokage tower. Nobody seemed willing to say anything. It was probably for the best, as he wasn't sure how they would take the news. He had been dreading visiting the Uzumaki to inform them of the tragedy. At that time, he had convinced himself that as the Hokage of a torn village, it was his duty to patch it up, and he used the excuse that he was always far too busy and that the village needed him. No matter how he phrased it, however, it came out sounding bad. The Sandaime blew out another plume of smoke. The day had hardly started and he already had all this on his desk. He was getting far too old for this job. Back at the Hokage's tower. Once they reached the Hokage's office, Hiruzen wearily sat back down onto his chair and gave his visitors another glance. The old man watched as Hiyashi settled down and his Anbu disappear into their usual spots before activating his privacy seals. Yugiri stepped forward and bowed before starting. I am sorry once again, Hokage-sama, for showing up unexpectedly. But like I said, we are here to visit Kushina and her family for the meantime, if you would allow us. Hiyashi looked down to the floor as Hiruzen sighed. Yugiri-chan, there is no need for formalities. But there is something I have to tell you. Yugiri looked up expectantly. Kushina and her husband are no longer with us. It took a full minute for this information to settle in, and Hiruzen watched their faces go from confusion to disbelief to anger and then to panic. Hiruzen, how did this happen? If Kushina is dead, then what will happen to the Uzukage heritage? She carried what you can call royal blood, and we only agreed for her to be here because we believed she would be safe. What are we going to do now? Yugiri yelled breathlessly, the Uzumaki behind her allowing her to voice their thoughts. Hiruzen held up his hand. Calm down Yugiri-chan. Give me some time to explain and I'll fill you in on what you have missed. Reluctantly, Yugiri took in deep breaths to help lower her blood temperature. She would have to listen to the old man to learn what had happened to her best friend. Grieving could be done later. When she was ready, Kushina's best friend gave a nod. Thankful that everything had calmed down, the Sandaime started his tale. The last time Kushina visited you was to inform your village about her being betrothed and due to be married, am I right? The mother of the kids nodded. She married Minato Namikaze a few months afterwards. Kaide looked up, suddenly interested. The scholar's Hokage-sama? She asked curiously. She had heard of the Namikaze clan before and knew that they were a small intelligent clan that loved to study. Hiruzen nodded. The two were a powerful team. Minato was a prodigy. He soaked up information like a sponge. Together with Kushina he invented quite a couple of powerful techniques and even completed Lord Sekon's Hiraishin no Jutsu. During the Third Great Ninja War he was a force to be reckoned with and became a one-man army against Iwagakure. With this power he became known as the Yellow Flash of Konoha. After the war, I officially stepped down from this office and he became the Yondaime Hokage. I remained here as an advisor for his office and watched as he and Kushina got married. They were very happy together. Hiruzen chuckled with Hiashi. But she was a handful if I say so myself. Violent and quick-tempered, I felt sorry for Minato at times. Hiruzen's face then hardened. Then on the night she was due to give birth, something terrible occurred. The Hokage looked towards Yugiri. What do you know of the Biju? Yugiri raised an eyebrow at the question and thought over her answer. The tailed beasts are powerful chakra constructs created by the Rakudo Sennin. There are 9 of them and each one has a certain number of tails representing its power. The Ikibi had 1 tail and the Kyubi had 9. Ever since we were able, we have been restraining them in Jinchuriki evenly distributed in between the villages. Hiruzen nodded. I'm sure you were aware that Kushina was a Jinchuriki as well. Yugiri nodded again. She was Migo-sama's replacement for the Kyubi. Did you know that during pregnancy, the seal holding the Biju weakens more and more with every passing day? But during labor itself, here the seal is at its weakest. I still don't understand what happened that day. Nothing should have gone wrong. Minato had gone with Kushina far outside the village when the time had come and I had supplied him with over 20 Anbu as protection. On that night, the Kyubi no Kitsune broke loose from the seal, right outside our village. The listening group gasped, knowing full well the consequences of loose Biju. The most powerful one at that. It shouldn't have happened, but when I investigated the area, all the Anbu I had stationed there were dead. It was like someone had interfered during the ongoing labor. We lost almost half the village and a great deal of ninja that day. Then the Minato managed to teleport the Kyubi further away from the village to prevent any more damage. No one knows for sure what happened after that, but when I arrived at the scene, Minato and Kushina had managed to restrain the Kyubi using her chains. And Kushina was carrying her child with her. Due to some sort of barrier husband and wife set up, I could only watch as the Kyubi impaled both of them while Minato performed the Shiki Fuin. Minato sealed the Kyubi into his own son that night. Yugiri let the tears fall down her face. She wished she had been there that night, she could have helped. Kaide and Akane hugged their mother comfortingly while the others watched, unsure of what they could possibly do to help. Then something clicked in her head and she looked back up at the Hokage. Hokage-sama, where is the boy? How old is he now? What does he look like? She blurted out, desperate for some good news. Hiruzen smiled back at her and leaned back into his chair, relaxing. His name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. If you are asking why he does not go by the name Namikaze, we decided it would be safer for him. His father had many enemies and what better way to get revenge than by killing his child. Hiruzen opened an eye and studied Arashi carefully. As for looks, he is very similar to your son. Just give him blonde hair and blue eyes instead of that red hair and green eyes and you can see what he looks like. And for attitude, he beats Kushina hands down. Loud, annoying and absolutely stubborn and hard-headed. Also quite possibly the most innovative and well-known prankster this village has ever known. The sudden lighting up of the 3 children's faces did not escape Sarutobi's notice. What has he done so far, Hokage-sama? Arashi beamed at him. The old man could have sworn he saw an evil glint in the boy's eyes. Well, he has defiled the Hokage monument numerous times, set the teachers' academy bathrooms to explode and somehow paint the Anbu into a colorful mess. Hiruzen immediately stopped listing. He had suddenly realized that these were Naruto's cousins and at the moment they seemed to already be plotting. I think I like my cousin already. Arashi smirked. You aren't the only one. Akane added. Kaide seemed to be deep in thought. Hokage-sama. Yugiri said, catching the old man's attention. If the whole village knows he is a Jinchuriki, how is he treated? The somber mood at which she asked the question darkened the mood. Hiruzen's face hardened. Despite my best efforts to keep him safe, he is treated the same as any Jinchuriki. He is hated. I made a law that forbids people to talk about him being a Jinchuriki so that he could make friends his age. However, it seems that it didn't work. The older generation hates him and their children follow in their direction. They raise prices, beat him and send him away from almost everywhere he goes. After I had had enough with the orphanage, I got him his own apartment to live in to hope he would be safe there. Sadly, he is alone. It doesn't help that he doesn't know his parents either due to safety issues, and as far as he knows, he is practically clanless. Yugiri clenched her fists. Nothing good seems to have come out of this, Hokage-sama. Why didn't you visit us? He could have lived happily with his own people. He is not permitted to leave the village. He is the Konoha's Jinchuriki and losing him would disrupt the balance of power and may start another war. I could not do that. Yugiri grit her teeth. You could have at least called upon us. We could have been sent here to take care of him at least. He would have at least had a family to protect him. Hiruzen bowed his head in sadness and guilt. I am sorry, Yugiri, but I guess I was afraid how your clan would react to Kushina's death. The Uzumaki would probably have gotten angry. Well, what do you think they would feel now? The sole person destined to lead our clan is treated worse than a demon. What would Kushina think of this? I have decided. We are going to be staying here, Hokage-sama. I want to watch over my nephew now. Uzumaki-san. Hiyashi called, speaking for the first time during the whole encounter. I have recently taken in Naruto as a guest into my clan grounds. He has been living with us for the past 2 days and seems to be settling in quite nicely. Since I am the clan head, nobody dares harm the boy or make him feel unwelcome. May I ask that he stay with me so that his life can settle down? Yugiri studied the white-eyed man in front of her. He seemed to genuinely care about Naruto. Fine, Hyuga-san, as long as we get to live not very far away from your grounds. Hiyashi nodded and looked to Hiruzen, who gave his consent. Yugiri-chan, how far educated are your children? I would like to know whether I should put them into the academy together with Naruto. Yugiri thought about it for a minute. The girls' taijutsu is in good form, and are moderate in genjutsu. Ninjutsu and the 3 required techniques to graduate are a bigger problem, as we sometimes cannot help overloading the jutsus. Urashi is, well, having trouble in all of them. Urashi pouted upon hearing this while his sisters laughed. Hiruzen smiled. Well then, the children can join Naruto in this year's class. You 4 escorts can be shown your new home by some of my Anbu after this meeting. Yugiri, please stay after they leave. I need to have a word. Cat, show the children the way to the academy after they clean up, their mother will pick them up after school. Hiruzen decided. Hi, Hokage-sama. Cat answered, bowing. Follow me. She gestured to the children as she walked out of the office. Ghost, Dragon. Take the 4 bodyguards to the house in District 7. It should be only 2 blocks away from the Hyuga compound. Hiruzen ordered. When there were only 3 people in the room, Hiyashi stood up and walked over to stand next to the Hokage. And now, Yugiri, I feel you should know about a few special changes regarding Naruto. He has obtained some unique abilities. And I think you should also know about our little Uchiha problem. Yugiri raised an eyebrow and took a seat. 2 hours later, classroom. Hinata was standing awkwardly next to Naruto. She was jealous, but she was far too shy to do anything about it. Come on, Ino. What's wrong with you treating us to a barbecue joint? Naruto asked, attempting to convince Ino. Said girl had her hands on her hips and was glaring at the blonde boy. I'm fine with going to the joint with you guys, but why do I have to pay? She complained, sulking. Come on, Ino, it's your turn after all. And if not a barbecue, then why not Ichiraku's? Naruto added innocently, rubbing the back of his head. I agree with Naruto. Choji seconded his friend. Are you kidding me? Ino yelled. Do you know how much you and Choji eat? I saved up this pocket money and I'm not spending it on one meal for you two. Naruto and Choji pouted, unaware of what was going through Hinata's head. He's not asking her on a date. He's not asking her on a date. It can't be a date if it's with Shikamaru and Choji can it. And Ino's paying. If it's a date, it's only two people and the boy pays, right? Right. At that moment a chorus of screams was heard as Sasuke walked in through the doors and Ino spun around and joined in. Naruto sighed. Well, there goes our free lunch. Sasuke scowled and walked to his desk before covering his ears. The blonde boy almost pitied his friend. Almost. Hey girls. Do you know what underwear Sasuke wears? He yelled loudly. Almost immediately, all the girls minus Hinata were staring at him with wide expectant eyes. Sasuke growled, and before Naruto could open his mouth a hand was firmly clamped over it. Naruto, that's a low blow. Sasuke growled in his ear. Naruto burst out laughing. I know. Everyone's attention was suddenly grabbed by a new boy who had leapt onto the wooden stand for the instructors. Everyone immediately noticed his spiky red hair and emerald green eyes gazing at the class before he yelled, Oi! I am the strongest ninja here in this room, Tte. The silence that followed was intense. The two red-haired girls that had arrived with the boy face-palmed for all to see. Sasuke's chuckle echoed across the silent room. I think we have a new dobi in this room. At the front of the room Arashi's grin faded and he set a hard look on his face. He was still looking for Naruto. The Hokage had said they looked alike, but there were hardly any other redheads in the room. He shook his fist angrily at the one who had insulted him. Oi, Tem. What do you mean dobi? Sasuke smirked. That went well. Naruto took his turn to laugh. Oi. Red-headed baka. You need to beat Sasuke here if you wanna be the best. And currently I am the closest one to beating him. And you look like a loser too, Tte. Arashi's left eye twitched. Are you mocking the way I talk? How dare you? Kaide looked up and immediately recognized the spiky blonde hair and blue eyes. Arashi, I think that's, but before she could finish Arashi growled, still on top of the teacher's box. Fine, I'll teach you a lesson. The class then watched as Arashi turned into a blur headed straight for Naruto. Naruto unconsciously activated Suihogen the second he felt under threat and was able to watch the new red-haired kid slowly running towards him. Naruto watched the arm pull back for a punch aimed at his face. Oh well, he thought, feeling the black chakra within him move towards his hand. He held it out in front of him to catch the fist. The class gasped in shock and surprise when they felt the small shockwave from the impact. The new boy had shocked them by showing just how fast and powerful he was while Naruto simply surprised them. Naruto had been able to catch such a powerful attack and didn't even seem to feel it. Naruto deactivated his Dujutsu and studied the boy in front of him. He felt oddly like he was looking in a mirror. The only noticeable differences was the contrast of dark red and neon yellow and the emerald green eyes that stared deep into the cerulean blue. After recovering from the surprise that someone had so effortlessly blocked his attack, Arashi also studied the blonde in front of him. Naruto. He thought. A chakra-induced voice loudly called everyone's attention, and it sounded angry. Naruto Uzumaki. Mizuki snarled. Getting into a fight with the new kid, are you? Don't you have anything better to do? Arashi's suspicions were now confirmed. He was proud of his cousin. If Naruto could block his strikes that easily, then it seemed he was doing well. Then he caught his cousin wince from the accusation before glaring at the instructor. Arashi felt anger spike within him. He vaguely recalled the Hokage mentioning bias and prejudice towards his cousin, and he didn't like it. Arashi spun around and shouted back at the teacher. Oi, are you blind or what? If you were looking you would have seen me starting it. Mizuki turned his glare to the redhead. Watch your mouth, boy, just because you are new here doesn't give you any special rights. Mizuki narrowed his glare even further, noting the similarities between both boys. What is your name anyway? Arashi thumped his chest proudly. I am Arashi Uzumaki. Naruto turned his head quizzically to the boy that had attacked him a moment ago. Uzumaki. Arashi turned to face his blonde cousin. Yeah, Uzumaki. Hello cousin. Naruto was in shock. Plain and simple, he had never, in his wildest dreams, ever thought that he would find any family. He was close to collapsing from shock before a steadying hand from Hinata helped keep him keeling over. The two Uzumaki females couldn't help but smile at how happy Naruto seemed to look at finding his family. Naruto looked at his male cousin and saw a familiar spark in his eyes, one that defined the person as a prankster. Likewise, Arashi saw the same kind of spark in his cousin's eyes. The two male Uzumaki then grinned at each other before turning to face Mizuki in sync, grinning like foxes. Mizuki was a little unsettled by this and scowled back. The instructor wanted to glare but was torn between the two colors as both were equally unnerving. Suddenly two girls each grabbed one of the boys by the ear. "Itai! Itai! Itai!" Both boys cried out in pain. "Behave, boys, we don't wanna get in trouble now, do we?" Akane asked sweetly. Naruto gulped. "Ito, Arashi. Who are these two?" he asked nervously. "Oh, yeah. They're your cousins as well. Meet my sisters Kaide and Akane. Akane's the scary one holding your ear." Arashi clarified in an equally terrified voice. "Oh no fair, why do I get the scary one?" Naruto whined. Akane's sweet face turned sour as her fist connected with Naruto's head. "What did you call me?" she asked sweetly again. Naruto clamped his mouth shut. "Okay class, settle down, that involves all of you Uzumaki." A new voice calmly rang out. Naruto stood up and bowed respectfully. "Hi, Iruka-sensei." Naruto then took his place next to Hinata, rubbing his head where Akane hit him. Seeing their cousin's respect for the man, the three Uzumaki siblings followed suit. "Due to our little, eventful morning, I think you are now aware of the newest additions to our class, so we can skip introductions. We will continue our tests from yesterday to further affirm where all of you currently are. Same timetable, but this time we will do a little bit of ninjutsu. Today, we start on Konoha's history." The class groaned again and most prepared for another boring lecture. That was, until a small crash brought attention back to Arashi. Naruto bit back laughter at the familiar sight, only stopped by a slight pinch from Hinata to behave. "Was I that bad?" he asked innocently. The lavender-eyed girl nodded before taking out her books, indicating for Naruto to do the same. The crash had come from Arashi's forehead connecting with the table, and the red-haired boy seemed to have almost instantly fallen asleep and was now snoring soundly on his table. At the front of the class, Iruka sighed. Finally, when Naruto seemed to be finally pulling himself out of the gutter, the blonde's cousin instantly took his place as the class idiot. It was going to be a long year. Throughout the lecture, Naruto simply wrote down everything that appeared on the board or heard what Iruka had to say. Even if he didn't know what was going on, he figured Hinata and Hitomi would help him understand it during their review time at home. Naruto stared incredulously at Arashi. If he was like that once, then he had to remedy that issue as soon as possible. In other ways, however, he liked his cousin. It wasn't every day someone more loud, brash and stupid than yourself showed up anyway. When the lecture ended, Naruto decided to try and bond with his cousin, and gathered Hinata, Kiba and Shino before setting after his red-haired relatives. "Class, before we all start training in our throwing, I would like to see our 3 new addition skills in this particular field. Naruto, please come forward and demonstrate, please." "Hi, Iruka-sensei." Naruto walked forward to collect the kunai and shuriken. Sakura raised her hand. "Sensei, why can't Sasuke-kun demonstrate? Why would you let the baka? Sasuke-kun is the best." Naruto glanced at his pink-haired teammate and made a show of trying to clean his ears, which brought on laughter from his peers. "Gah, Banshee couldn't have gotten a smaller mouth or a bigger brain." Naruto smirked. A vein on Sakura's forehead became clearly visible, as her face contorted in fury. "Whoa, the big forehead is coming to life." Ino teased. "Sasuke-kun won't like you now, forehead," the blonde girl added, sticking her tongue out at her rival. Sakura was fuming and now she didn't know who to direct her anger towards. Since Ino was much closer, she decided to try and throttle the girl. "Sakura, behave. Do you want disciplinary measures?" Mizuki snarled. The pink-haired girl stopped to watch Naruto's throws, but not before sending a glare at Ino. Now hopefully there are no more issues for the rest of the period. "Naruto, you may continue." Iruka clarified. Naruto took a deep breath and watched the targets, slowly but surely and without alerting anyone. His eyes took a familiar orange tinge. Kaede had been watching everyone in her new classroom, closely evaluating each one. She noticed that most of the people she would get along with were friends with her cousin. She especially seemed to like the fact that the Hyuga girl was one of the only ones that wasn't fangirling over Sasuke, the other being the girl with her hair in two buns. Kaede liked the Hyuga more, however, as the girl seemed close to her cousin, she just wasn't sure how close. The red-headed girl had also been watching Naruto specifically ever since she first saw him. In the time it took for them to get to school, Kaede had already managed to unearth most incidents involving her blonde cousin. She was angered at how many times he had been transferred, punished, and hospitalized, and at such a young age. Shop records also indicated high prices at whatever Naruto had ever bought compared to sales. He had had a terrible life. But seeing him right now, he seemed somewhat happy with what few friends he had, and she was happy for him. That happiness turned into shock when she watched Naruto's display of accuracy and skill with thrown weapons. And she wasn't the only one. Even if the rest of the class had seen his ability, it was still hard to believe. Iruka managed to get out of his stupor first and went back into teacher mode. That was a brilliant display, Naruto. Now, can you share with the class your technique? Naruto turned and grinned sheepishly at Iruka while rubbing the back of his head. Ito, sensei. I don't really know how. Mizuki's jaw dropped. What? How is it possible? He asked curiously. The demon brat was getting better. I don't know. I kinda just throw it, you know. Arashi looked up and felt a challenge. If his cousin could do it, he could. Oi, sensei. Give me kunai, I can do better than that. He declared proudly. Naruto caught the two Uzumaki sisters' face palm and wondered why. His attention snapped back to Arashi as Naruto stood back in line. Arashi felt all eyes on him and felt good. Yes, now they'll see some skill. A good first impression is important. With a deep breath, Arashi launched all the kunai at once and everyone gasped. Mizuki was watching Arashi intently with his arms crossed. What would this boy be like? Hopefully average. Mizuki got his answer in the form of 6 kunai headed his way, all locked in on his position. Mizuki cursed and took out his own kunai to desperately deflect the oncoming danger. The boy was worse than Naruto had ever been, that was for sure. Mizuki confirmed this fact as he had been standing over 30 feet away from the target. If not for the other wayward projectiles, the instructor could have sworn the redhead had been aiming at him. But he wasn't the only one incredulous at the boy's apparent lack of skill. Iruka was standing a good distance directly behind Arashi. His shock was multiplied as 2 kunai were headed straight for his face and he only barely managed to get the clipboard up in front. The 2 kunai had embedded themselves into the thick, wooden clipboard. He lowered it and gasped at the range that the single throw had covered. Hinata had covered her eyes when she saw the kunai headed for her and was silently counting down for the kunai to hit. Even if they were blunt, they still hurt a lot. After 5 seconds of waiting, she peeked out and stared right at point of the weapon and she drew a sharp intake of breath. She relaxed when saw that Naruto had managed to catch the weapon just before it hit her face and thanked Kami he had managed to catch it. Akane was pissed. She marched toward her brother and slapped his head powerfully enough to send him tumbling. Baka! Are you trying to kill us? She yelled. At least nobody got hurt. Arashi countered, leaping to his feet. Iruka managed to step in before things got out of hand. Okay, class. We can practice weapons usage next week. Arashi, try to train at home with that for now. Moving on to taijutsu sparring. Arashi, you will be partnered with Naruto. Kaede, Ino. Akane, Sakura. After these matches we will aid you as required. The scar-faced Chunin watched the cousins draw and face each other, smirking. This is going to be interesting, he thought. Begin. The moment he got the signal, Naruto activated Suihogen, but without yelling its name. In his orange field of vision, he noted that Arashi had no particular stance whatever and was rushing him, possibly goading Naruto into a slugfest. Naruto figured Arashi was more of a brawler just like he was. While studying his cousin, however, he noticed that he could predict the strength of the punch as well as the speed and where it would hit. That was useful. Naruto decided to see just how strong the punches were and rushed the black chakra to strengthen and reinforce his arms. He raised his forearms and braced for impact. Everyone watched as Arashi almost turned into a blur, covering the distance between him and Naruto within seconds. The next thing they noticed was the large impact from when the fist connected with Naruto's forearms. While both boys seemed unaffected, the shockwave of displaced air forced a cloud of dust and dirt strongly away from the two combatants. Arashi smirked at his cousin, who smirked back. "You're strong, cousin, I guess I'll have to go hard on you." His confident grin was matched by Naruto. "By all means, cousin, by all means." Arashi pulled his fist back and launched a kick at Naruto's chest. Naruto had decided that he would try and tire out his cousin by blocking his hits and trying to counter instead of dodging, since he could take the hits anyway. Arashi began speeding up his kicks and punches, always to be blocked by one or both of Naruto's hands. This was new. Mostly other Uzumaki had difficulty keeping up with Arashi's speed. It was the reason he hadn't taken up a taijutsu style, as his speed and randomness were usually more than enough to disorient and overpower his opponent. But the blonde-haired kid in front of him right now was blocking them with next to no effort. It was only luck that Naruto hadn't countered yet. Naruto was enjoying himself. His opponent was a great brawler. There was the speed, strength and dangerous unpredictability. Too bad he could see very move clearly and in slow motion. The blonde was completely sure where every hit would go, and he seemed to have 10 whole seconds to think about a block, when in the real world they could hardly even keep track of what was going on. The audience of academy students were awed. If the small shockwaves produced from every hit were an indicator of how much power was being used, they could also hardly see the combatants and could only vaguely tell where they were because of the orange blur. Added to that, there were around 3 shockwaves a second. Back in the fight, Arashi was getting frustrated. There was also the issue of that constant grin on Naruto's face that was simply infuriating. He started to add more power into his punches and increased his speed, but all his hits felt like they were slamming into solid rock. That was also new. "Let's finish this already," Arashi yelled in frustration. "As you wish," Naruto mocked. The blonde ducked under the next punch and sidestepped the following kick and landed a vicious right hook to Arashi's lower jaw, knocking him out. Naruto stood over his cousin's prone body and slapped him awake. Arashi groaned. Well, that was embarrassing. All of Naruto's friends were happy for him. If he could get this good so quickly, then they should be able to as well. Neji was confused. He dares to defy fate. We shall see. He will experience pain, he thought darkly. Mizuki was seething. Even though he hated to admit it, the demon boy was powerful and skilled. As a teacher, the Naruto would have been an honor to teach, and it would be nice to see him go and do great things. But that was the problem. A direct order from the civilian council gave him the right to try and disrupt the boy's education. But then again, if this boy was good now, how much better would he be later on? He would be even more useful. Mizuki decided to aid the boy and act like a good teacher from now on. That way, when the time came, he could fool Naruto into doing his dirty work. The possibilities kept rolling in, and Mizuki smiled. It wouldn't hurt to help Naruto advance now, would it? Great match. At least we now know Arashi and Naruto have taijutsu as a strong point. Next, Sakura and Akane. Cha Sasuke-kun. I can now show you I'm the best. Sakura yelled, punching the air excitedly. Naruto face-palmed. Didn't she say that yesterday against Hinata-chan? Kiba groaned. Get used to it. He mumbled. Akane overheard them. After studying her opponent a little, Akane decided that she could end this quickly. Checking up on Sakura Haruno's records had been weird. The Uzumaki placed her into the bookworm category with no physical skills. And from what she saw of the Pinkett, the girl was dieting and using tons of beauty products, no doubt trying to get the attention of the Uchiha. For Akane, this level of stupidity was new. Why do you like the Uchiha anyway? Akane asked, sounding bored with her arms crossed. Sakura immediately went on the defensive. The Uchiha has a name. It's Sasuke-kun. And everybody likes Sasuke. Akane scoffed. We don't all like him. I know I don't. Don't insult Sasuke-kun. Sakura growled, with her voice low and clenching her fists. Akane raised a mocking eyebrow. Or what? Gonna punish me? By the way, last I looked, Sasuke doesn't even like you. Sakura glared back. Of course he does. I am top kunoichi in our class. There's no girl smarter than me here. Sakura countered. In the back of the crowd, Kaide sneezed. Being a bookworm. Do you even know what it means to be a ninja? You have to fight. Where will all your fancy ideas go if your body doesn't even know how to use them? You need to train hard physically. If it's still not enough, then train harder and harder. If you work hard enough, you will get what you want. In the crowd, everyone noticed Lee step forward, admiration in his eyes. Enough. I've had it with you. Sakura didn't wait for a begin signal and charged the Uzumaki that had her arms still crossed. Akane leaned a little to her right to avoid the jab Sakura sent her before counter-attacking by slapping the pink-haired girl's face. The echo resounded across the silent playground. Sakura held her cheek in shock for a moment but quickly forgot about the sting and turned back to trying to pummel Akane. The redhead ducked under 2 more punches and sidestepped a forward kick. Sakura's other foot then came flying high up in a roundhouse kick. Akane ducked and swiped Sakura's out from under her so that the girl was free falling onto her back. Akane then stood up and drove her heel into Sakura's stomach, accelerating her short fall to the ground where she stayed. Iruka didn't know what to think about Sakura. What Akane had said was true, but maybe beating it into the girl wasn't such a great idea. After the fight, Lee ran straight up to the victor. What a youthful fight. You also burn with the flames of youth and believe in the essence of hard work. Guy-sensei would love you as a student. Now please spar with me, beautiful lady. If I lose, then I shall go run 5 times around Konoha. Lee exclaimed, bowing. Akane took in the boy before her. He was wearing black shorts and a red shirt with brown sandals. She studied his face carefully after he stood back up and took in the round eyes and the large eyebrows that stared back at her. Along with his shiny, black bowler cut, Akane found him intriguing. She also remembered reading about Lee Rock, the boy who only used taijutsu but was doing well enough to stay in the academy. That spoke of great determination. She began to realize that she was admiring the boy for his accomplishments. When he tilted his head, Akane realized that he was waiting for an answer. Hi, and if you lose then I shall join you, Tte. Akane declared enthusiastically. Such youthful spirit. I wish for you to meet Guy-sensei in the near future. Now come, let us begin over there. I believe your sister will have her fight here. Akane could have sworn he was about to start crying in the beginning before a fire lighted in his eyes, literally. She found this hilarious and told the boy to follow her and made sure he kept up. After the two left the field for their own spar, Iruka had already propped Sakura up against a tree and called the next fight between Kaide and Ino. For some reason, Shikamaru felt compelled to observe this fight and popped a lazy eye open. Kaide slowly made her way to the fight and stared at Ino lazily. Hurry up, I don't want this to take too long. As soon as the match started, Kaide realized that Ino was much better than Sakura at fights. She resorted to dodging as it seemed like the task which required least energy. She didn't want to go head-to-head. Dodging Ino's attacks was a fairly simple task. Kaide just had to either step to the side or duck. After 5 minutes, Ino still didn't show signs of tiring or letting up. This is troublesome, Tte. Kaide commented. Choji nudged Shikamaru, whose normally lazy eyes had widened. This new girl seemed intriguing. He raised himself from his spot on a log and sat down with his arms crossed, watching more closely. Hey Ino. That new girl said she can take Sasuke whenever he wants. Kiba yelled. Kaide sighed when Ino's eyes hardened and began attacking more ferociously than before while Kiba dropped on the ground laughing while being scolded by Hinata. What a drag. I said I didn't want to get tired. Kaide grumbled. She caught Ino's next punch and hauled the blonde girl towards her. When Ino was close enough, Kaide lifted a new which connected with Ino's stomach. Ino dropped directly after and Iruka ended the match. Kaide walked over to a tree alone and unsealed a scroll to start reading. She was a little lost in her own world, but she noticed enough about her surroundings to notice the pineapple-haired boy that lay down on the grass next to her to gaze up at the sky and the clouds. Normally, Kaide felt uncomfortable when anyone was near her while she read. But for some reason, she felt at ease with the boy currently next to her. And if appearances were anything to go by, he seemed comfortable around her as well. They sat together in peaceful silence for quite some time, vaguely registering the remaining fights. After a while Shikamaru turned away from the clouds to look at the redhead next to him. He simply gazed into her emerald green eyes darting back and forth while reading, and he got caught in a trance watching them. Kaide noticed this development and felt a blush slowly rising. This was definitely new. She returned the look the boy was giving her. After a little bit of gazing, the boy made an offer. Care for a game of shogi? Shikamaru propped himself up on one elbow to speak to her directly. Kaide smirked. Are you any good? Shikamaru smirked back. I'm a Nara. Kaide unsealed a board from a scroll. Figures. Shikamaru chuckled and sat opposing her as they started the game. Later on, Iruka was testing the students with the 3 required jutsu for them to pass: Henge, Kawarimi and Bunshin. The teacher had gotten quite a shock when Naruto, Sasuke and Arashi had decided to perform an Warok no Jutsu at practically the same time. His reaction had been priceless for the students as he had promptly fainted with blood trailing down his nose. During the Kawarimi, Naruto had somehow managed to substitute himself with Enko's dango plate and had blamed it on Iruka ordering him to do so. The irate woman had then sadistically tortured the scar-faced Chunin with snakes before deciding that he was boring. The most interesting event, however, was the Bunshin. Naruto, your turn. Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto was pleased when he smoke cleared and a perfect copy of him was produced. Then the clone rounded on him and punched him. Oitem. What was that for? Naruto shot back up to his feet angrily and faced the clone, who by now had its arm crossed and was grinning smugly at the original. I don't know, boss, I just felt like it. You felt like it. I made you so you follow my rules. You won't hit me. If you do that again, then I'll never make a Bunshin again. The clone lost its grin and began pleading. Yes, boss. Sorry, boss, won't happen again, Ibeo. Promise. And we never go back on our word. Right, boss. Naruto gave the clone a once-over and let it stand up, before shaking its hand. Welcome to the Naruto Corps. The clone chuckled before it noticed Mizuki's interested face. What's wrong, Mizuki? Got something on my face? The clone asked angrily. Both the original and the clone were surprised when the jibe didn't get the intended reaction. Instead, it seemed to make Mizuki even more curious. Naruto, did you know that clones don't have their own self-consciousness? Both Narutos looked at him in confusion and tilted their head to the right, almost in sync. Normally clones are made and they follow one order for a while, but no simple clone is able to think on its own, separate from its real owner's thoughts. I think you have accidentally made a cage Bunshin, Naruto. Both orange-clad boys were looking at him strangely. Are you really, Mizuki? Of course I am. Why? I thought you hated the boss and now you're actually teaching us. The clone said coldly. Mizuki smiled a warm smile for the first time in a long while. Well, I've had a talk with Iruka and I just have to say, I'm sorry. Mizuki smiled sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head much like Naruto. From now on I promise to help train you properly. All I ask is a little more respect as a sensei, and if I like your progress, I'll treat you to ramen. Both Narutos lightened up and grinned before the original held out his hand. It's a deal, Mizuki-sensei, we can start from scratch. Yes, we can. Mizuki answered and shook the boy's outstretched hand. He felt a little flutter in his stomach when he saw the boy's happy grin. No. He thought. I don't feel anything for you. This is all just part of my plan. But Mizuki couldn't shake the feeling of right that was nagging at the back of his head. Naruto, cage bunchins are a Jonin-level technique and are very risky to use as they halve the user's chakra. Kakashi Hatake uses them in fights to test his opponent's abilities first, as they can think independently and fight. Once they get hit and dispelled, the information returns to the owner. Speaking of which, how durable is that clone? Normally only a slight hit is enough to dispel it. Naruto was more than happy to finally receive information from Mizuki voluntarily. The man also seemed genuine to Naruto, so he would listen to him. Let me see. And with that, Naruto launched a powerful punch at the clone's face and his fist connected. Surprisingly though, the clone didn't even budge. Naruto immediately realized that his clone could also use his black chakra armor and possibly Suihogan as well. Mizuki, however, did not know that. He was simply amazed at the durability of the clone and punched it himself just to be sure. He hurt his knuckles in doing so while the clone smirked at him. "Nay, Mizuki-sensei. Let's play a game. Turn around and then try and guess the original one." The clone challenged smugly. Mizuki laughed. "Fine, just a minute. Iruka. Get over here. Me and Naruto have a test for you," Mizuki called. The other students watched in awe at the advanced clone that the senseis had taken an interest to and were simply watched to gather what information that they could about it. Naruto didn't know whether to be annoyed or pleased that Iruka could not tell the real him from the clone. Annoyed because Iruka didn't really know him, or pleased that his clone was just like him. Either way, the look on Iruka's face when he couldn't dispel either clone was priceless. Mizuki had won the bet and now Iruka would be treating both him and Naruto to an establishment of Naruto's choice. The eventful academy day ended a little bit later with everyone parting ways. Naruto bade farewell to his cousins and friends at the training field before turning to Sasuke. "Still up for it, duck butt? You bet I am, Whisker Boy." The two friends chuckled and leapt over the wall. Meanwhile, the woman stood at the doors of the chambers and took one last look at all the frightened people inside. "Kenshi, you are in charge here. Once this door is sealed, it can only be opened from the inside. You will need that ring I gave you. It will only glow when I send my chakra to my ring, and I am on the other side of the door." The man nodded. "Take care, Makoto-sama. Hopefully Konoha will live through this." Makoto Uchiha nodded. "If this door is somehow opened by another Uchiha, tell them I captured you and forced you all into here." "Understood. Tonight, the Uchiha stupidity will fall. My husband has called this upon himself." With those parting words, Makoto shut the seal that protected all the innocents of her clan. This way none of them would be caught up in the crossfire that was sure to happen later that night. The only ones she could not immediately bring to safety were Shisui and Itachi, but they were both Anbu, so there was no issue there. The real problem was Sasuke. He was at the academy unprotected. Hopefully she would have time to get him out of there and prevent him from returning home after her meeting with the Hokage. Makoto had overheard all the plans of her husband Fugaku Uchiha to take over and how he would do so. The operation would have been set in 3 days. She was hoping Hiruzen would be ready to do something before the Uchiha were ready as she made her way to his office. Shisui and Itachi together were powerful, but against the entire part of their clan that had activated their Sharingan. No way. Even Kushina wouldn't be stupid enough to try and overcome such odds. Then again, maybe not. Makoto smiled at the thought. At the Hokage's office. Fortunately, when Makoto had arrived, the 3 elders of the Hokage were in a meeting with him. At first she had been denied entry, but she demanded that they let her in, and it was about the Uchiha. When the 2 Anbu did not budge, Makoto's Sharingan flared. "If anything drastic happens to the village tonight, I will be sure to explain that it was because you 2 did not allow me to give my warning to Hokage-sama. I am sure you are aware of the gravity regarding the Uchiha clan situation," Makoto stated in a cold voice. A brief image of Kushina punching the man through the wall angrily crossed her mind. The 2 Anbu looked unsure but decided to see whether they could interrupt the meeting for a while. They knocked on the door gently and waited for an answer. A few minutes later, the wife of the Uchiha clan head faced the Hokage and his 3 elders. Danzo started the conversation. "Makoto-san. Why have you come to see us?" he asked suspiciously. I know about Itachi and Shisui's plans against the clan. I am here to aid you with information. How can you prove your trustworthiness? Homura scrutinized the lady. Are you not the Fugaku's wife? I am his wife, I admit. But I am not part of the plan. Shisui and Itachi have already told you that there are innocents amongst the clan, did they not? Homura nodded. I have brought all those who are not involved to a safe place and they will remain safe as now, only Itachi, Shisui and I know of its location. I know that Itachi and Shisui have been attending meetings and trying to grab the information they could, but I believe I know much more. I alone have access to Fugaku's office and all his paperwork. Added to this, I overheard a meeting with the main players involved in this coup. They are preparing seals all around the village which will allow them to teleport into all of the other clans' compounds at night and massacre the opposition. I must warn you that they will strike in 3 days, midnight, which is why I request for you to lead an early strike against them tonight. Makoto informed. Danzo's eyes narrowed. You are certain this information is true, you may be leading us into a trap and you are his wife after all. Makoto glared at the man and scoffed. You and I both know I have no feelings for the man. My parents never allowed me to marry outside the clan and so an arranged marriage to the future clan head was immediately arranged. I have fulfilled my duty as a wife and mother to his children, but this is going too far. Konohagakure is under threat from his ambitions. Do you suggest I allow that to happen? Makoto crossed her arms defiantly and took deep breaths to try and regain her calm. I do not care for those left in the compound. They should get what they deserve. I have already moved everyone innocent and not involved in this coup. I suggest you strike tonight, for when they find out that over half the clan is missing, they may launch their attack even without being fully prepared. Danzo nodded, accepting the information he had received. One look at the others already told him that they accepted the hard fact that the Uchiha were not to be trusted, except, of course, for Hiruzen. The Sandaime tiredly put his hands in his palms and sighed. Is there really no way we can avoid this crisis by peaceful means? Danzo glared at his old friend. Hiruzen, we have already spoken about this. You have offered them your hand of kindness for far too long. It is time to do what is best for Konoha. Kaharu patted Hiruzen's back comfortingly. It is a harsh time, my friend, but it is either the village or these demented men. You know what we have to do. The Hokage groaned and looked up. Very well then, Danzo, summon your root. They will join together with the full force of my Anbu. After that we should just wait for Itachi and Shisui to return, then we shall launch our attack, summon the forces the other clan heads have prepared. Almost as if on cue the two Uchiha sunshined into the room in a swirl of leaves with one knee already on the floor and bowing urgently. Hokage-sama. We have a problem. Flashback. Itachi and Shisui had hanged themselves into small twig on a tree branch near Fugaku's window. Any Sharingan would have easily seen through the henge, but with both Anbu suppressing their chakra so much, they were practically invisible. They had only recently found this spot before the meeting started and were now listening intently to the angry conversation taking place inside. Fugaku. This is serious. The other clan members are missing. Including Makoto-sama. A worried Uchiha elder pointed out. Fugaku growled. I could not care less for her. Have you not noticed yet? Everyone not included in the coup is missing. Makoto is the only other one besides Itachi and Shisui who has the Sharingan. Knowing her, she probably learned of this coup from our carelessness and has joined the other two pests in interfering. We cannot wait 3 more days, by then our element of surprise shall be gone. Fugaku-sama. We are not prepared, taking on all of Konoha now is suicide. One countered. This is foolhardy, Fugaku. Another Uchiha added. With Shisui and Itachi already spying on us, the Hokage knows about this. The old man was probably expecting a list of all those not involved, he was always too soft in matters such as these. Peace is nothing but an illusion. When I am Hokage, Konoha will no longer be weak under his rule and we Uchiha will finally get the respect that we deserve. Now gather the men, we shall strike before they do and bring that administration down. We will make our move in an hour. Fugaku ordered. Hi. The men answered in unison and ran off to inform their fellow conspirators and leave the room. Once Fugaku left the room and shut his door, the two Uchiha spies transformed back into their human forms to stare at each other in shock and fear. He too immediately vanished in swirls of leaves. Flashback end. Hiruzen growled and threw off his coat and cape, leaving him in his black battle gear as he summoned his regular staff that he used when he wasn't using Enma. Bear. Crow. Summon the Anbu right this instant. Code Red. I repeat, Code Red. Danzo was just as restless as his friend and was barking orders at his own men. Fu, Torun. Gather the Anbu. Mission code. Leaf cleansing. All said agents vanished in a swirl of leaves, realizing the urgency of the situation. Kaharu turned to another Anbu. Do not forget the other clan heads, warn them immediately. When all the Anbu had departed, leaving them alone, all eyes turned to a frightened Makoto. I need to get Sasuke. I left him at the academy and couldn't bring him anywhere safe. Itachi looked at his mother in worry. Ka-san, the academy closed down 2 hours ago. He might already be in the compound. Hiruzen stared at the worried Uchihas. Makoto, go find him now, but do not go anywhere near the camp. If he is there, then his father may not hurt him. I will give out an order not to harm any children in our attack. Makoto nodded with wide eyes and dashed out of the room. Itachi, Shisui. I am sorry, but we need you two in the attack. Makoto will find him, don't worry. Itachi managed to nod and follow his Hokage out of the room. In the Hyuga compound. The entire group of visiting Uzumaki had decided to stop by at the Hyuga compound, with Yugiri especially excited to meet her nephew. She was disappointed to find out that he had gone out with a classmate to presumably play. The 8 of them were all sitting together in a room along with Hinata, Hitomi and Hiyashi, who were busy entertaining their guests. Ka-san. Naruto was awesome. I think he's stronger and faster than Arashi. But he is definitely better than this baka at throwing things. Akane reported excitedly to her mother. Arashi bristled. So what? I admit he is much better than me, but I am better in, wait. Let me think. Kaide chuckled. I doubt it's in looks. That spiky blonde hair and those cool blue eyes are definitely a better combination than red and green, even if you two almost look alike. He's dreamy. Akane pretended to swoon. Yup, if he wasn't my cousin, I'd definitely be crushing on him. The taunting girls failed to notice Hinata sinking lower into her chair, burning red. That's right. I'm probably way better than him in pranks. What has he done so far anyway? Arashi asked quizzically. The visitors all collectively turned to Hiyashi, who had gone pale at the mention of pranks. He has done enough to warrant the title of most recognized prankster Konoha has ever seen. You guys don't do pranks, do you? Hiyashi began dreading the answer as 3 childish but evil grins made their way to his face. I think I would like us to try and surpass what he has accomplished, ne kaide, Akane. Arashi was now grinning at all the prospects. This was the best possible cousin. Hiyashi gulped and paled further. No, when was one Kushina not enough? The laughter was brought to a stop when a masked Anbu burst in through the door. Hiyashi-sama. Code Red. Gather in front of the compound in 15 minutes. We should halt their attack due in 30. The Hyuga clan head leapt to his feet. Misashi. He yelled to a man waiting outside his room. Inform the squad I prepared immediately. Operation Red will start immediately. He ordered. Hitomi, you stay here with the children. Yugiri-san, I believe you agreed to assist. Yugiri finally grasped what was going on and her face hardened. Uchiha. Hinata glanced up. Uchiha. What's wrong with Sasuke's family? Yugiri felt like she had been slapped. Sasuke's an Uchiha. Yes. She turned to Hiyashi. Is he involved? As far as I know, he is not. But they will probably head back to the compound as soon as the sun starts setting. Hiyashi mentally cursed. Hopefully they do not end up in the middle of the fight. The Anbu interrupted. We have been ordered not to harm any boys that we encounter. The 4 other adult Uzumaki recognized the danger to their only heir. Yugiri-sama. We must leave right away. Naruto is far too important. Yugiri nodded and pointed to the Anbu. You. Take us there now. The Anbu flinched and quickly did what he had been ordered to do. Hiyashi finished gathering his squad minutes later and followed the Uzumaki's trail. Please Naruto, don't be anywhere near there, not this time. He prayed silently to Kami. Meanwhile, Naruto, that was awesome. Sasuke yelled excitedly at his friend as they walked down the empty Konoha streets. It had come to the boys' attention, but since both had no one to ask, they dropped the issue. Is it a Kekai Genkai like my Sharingan? Naruto grinned back. I know, right? I don't think it's a Kekai Genkai though, I'll have to ask my cousins. After school, Naruto had taken Sasuke deep into the forests and had revealed his newfound powers to Sasuke. At first Sasuke had been shocked but nodded in understanding when Naruto explained his Suihogan, and Sasuke commented on how it was eerily similar to his clan's Sharingan. Then came the revelation of the hardened skin, which Sasuke found intriguing. It wasn't every day someone asked you to try and scratch you with a kunai. After a little spar, Naruto had started taking off his clothes and Sasuke had turned red. His father had warned him about this. That some boys may show affections towards him. Ito, turn around for a minute, Sasuke. The blushing red boy had complied instantly. Thinking along the lines of, no Naruto, I don't see you that way. Sasuke had then been snapped out of his thoughts by a metallic whirring voice and nearly had a heart attack when he turned around to see Naruto in his bumblebee form. The explanation about not wanting to rip his own clothes again was good enough. Nay, Sasuke. You'll keep it a secret, right? Naruto asked worriedly. About what? The part where you took of your clothes to show me something. Sasuke smirked, crossing his arms smugly. And no. Why would you even do that? Naruto yelled back, shaking his fist while blushing violently. Just don't tell Hinata-chan. Sasuke's smirk grew bigger. Now I know just who to tell. Naruto face-palmed and before pouting. Great, now what am I gonna do? Well, you can start by changing that orange jumpsuit. Oh wait, don't change here, Dobi. Sasuke. The good-natured banter carried on for a good 30 minutes until they reached Sasuke's secret way to get into the compound, a small tunnel near the back that led straight under their wall. Uchiha compound. Right, now that everyone is gathered. Let's go claim Konoha. Fugaku shouted to all of his men. Not so fast, Fugaku. Hiruzen warned. The walls of their compound were littered with Anbu, patiently waiting for the order to strike. So you knew then, old fool. Fugaku grinned. Let the fun begin. Upon their clan head's order, the traitorous Uchiha all drew in a deep breath. Kaden, Gukakyu no Jutsu. They yelled in unison as large fireballs shot out of their mouths towards the walls. Suiden, Suiryuden no Jutsu. Some of the Anbu yelled to counter the attack. The influx of water cancelled out the massive wave of oncoming fire. Then both sides charged to meet each other head-on. With Naruto. Naruto had a bad feeling in his gut. And it wasn't the type he got after drinking from a carton of expired milk. Something bad was going to happen. The blonde looked back towards where Sasuke had disappeared. Would it hurt to follow him just to be sure? Sasuke had had a great day. He was smiling to himself as he exited the tunnel. Due to his joy, he didn't notice the eerie silence and absence of people until he heard a jutsu being called before another one. The noise of the hiss of steam being formed from water meeting fire was unmistakable. Training. He immediately thought. Wait, we don't have any water users in the clan. And Tusan doesn't even allow anyone here. The sight he saw before him would have been amazing, if it wasn't for the fact that his clan seemed to be under attack by Konoha Anbu. The young Uchiha gaped at the scene, struggling to make sense of what was going on. Suiden and Kaden jutsus as well as some Doden were being thrown around all over the place. Wait, was that Mokuden? Would release in the battle there were Hyugas, Inuzukas as well as the Ino-Shika-Cho clans, all attacking the Uchiha. This was some sort of joke. Why would Konoha want to attack its strongest clan? He was snapped out of his trance when an Anbu landed directly in front of him. Sasuke involuntarily flinched and took a step back. The agent remembered his orders that he shouldn't hurt any young boy that came his way. Come kid, we need to get you to safety. The masked man offered his hand. The frightened boy whimpered. Why are you doing this? What did we do to you? The Anbu sighed. I'll explain later, I promise, but now we need to get you out of danger. Sasuke saw the sense in that statement and decided to trust the man. He grabbed the masked man's hand and let himself be led to safety. Getting out of danger seemed to be a good idea. Until, of course, to his horror, said man was impaled through the chest by a blade crackling with lightning. Sasuke resisted the urge to scream as he watched the masked man's body tumble down. So you were with your mother and Itachi then, aren't you, Sasuke? Fugaku stated calmly. Sasuke looked from the body to his father and back again. You killed him too, San. Why? Fugaku gave a laugh that chilled Sasuke to the bone. He didn't recognize the man anymore. Gone was the stern but caring father he had always lived with. In his place, a madman stood laughing hysterically. Why? The Uchiha clan head snickered. Makoto, Itachi, and now you betray me. Then you ask me why I kill. 2 San W what? B betray. Ka San. W when? Sasuke's spine was tingling as he looked at the man before him. The Uchiha are the greatest. We deserve the power to rule. We are at the top. Fugaku yelled. You all turned your back on this greatness for what? Konoha. This place isn't worth it. They fear power. In that fear they continue to put us down. But now they will know the power of the Uchiha. The clan head then stared at Sasuke. But you won't be there to see it. First of all, you have betrayed me. How much will your death destroy your mother, however? Sasuke had now taken a step back in shock. No. His father wouldn't kill his own son, would he? He saw the look in those deranged red eyes of his father's Sharingan that the answer to his question was yes. Before he closed his eyes, he watched as the sharp sword glinted by the moonlight, crackling with blue lightning coursing through it. Clang. Sasuke opened his eyes when he heard that sound. He took in his father's sword, still crackling with power, stopped by something yellow. Strong enough to counter the lightning-charged sword. He followed what looked to be a mechanical yellow arm to the body. Wait. There was only one possible being with this power, and he had seen it in action less than an hour before. Naruto. Suihogan. Fugaku studied the thing in front of him closely. There seemed to be no chakra emanating or powering it, but with how fast it had moved and the fact that it also had a dujutsu led him to believe that this was a powerful opponent. He noticed that his lightning sword had only managed to scrap the yellow armor, but that was already quickly repairing itself. He stared into the orange eyes of his opponent. Hello, demon brat. It seems you are starting to embrace what you really are. He mocked. Naruto scoffed. Ha, I'm the demon. He shook his head, chuckling. I don't see a worse demon than a man trying to kill his own son. Naruto shouted back in his whirring, robotic voice. I will still kill him. Fugaku stated matter-of-factly. And there is nothing you can do about it. Last I looked you were, dead last, in your class. What hope do you have? I don't need hope to beat you, Ibeo. If you wanna kill Sasuke then go through me, lunatic. Naruto. Web links. Web links.